Good evening and welcome to our December 16th school committee meeting. Stella Austin, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good job. Excellent. Okay, we have minutes and oath of bills and payroll from December 2nd, 2021.
Make a motion to accept the minutes from the December 2nd meeting, as well as the bills and payroll.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous vote. We'll move on to interested citizens.
Do you see any raised hands?
I do not see any.
No.
Okay, moving on. We have student representative report. Once again, we'll turn to Stella Austin.
So I'm Stella Austin. I'm the student representative from the high school, and I have some updates to give about all the schools. Last week at Shaker Lane, students in second grade had a day titled Little Town Community Day, where they created a variety of stores and community buildings out of boxes, hinges, plastic screws, and other materials. The students lined up their creations outside for all of the grades to view, and it was a huge success thanks to Ms. McGregor and the other second grade teachers. Many classrooms have been working on publishing writings for their students, or publishing writings that their students are making, and there have been several publishing parties that are showing off the students' hard work. Tomorrow, Shaker Lane School is hosting an event called Kid Casso after school in the art room. They are very excited about this event, and they hope to stimulate more interest in art within the school. The kindergarten students are studying different holidays around the world. They are receiving miniature, like cardboard or paper suitcases filled with information about holidays in a multitude of countries. This is a great learning experience, and the school is very glad that they are being exposed to different cultural traditions. Shaker Lane would also like to wish everyone a healthy, and safe holiday break. At Russell Street, the teachers participated in professional development at the school on Tuesday and Thursday of last week to practice implementing the Lucy Calkins writing strategies. Members of Littleton Rotary Club, or not club, just like organization, and Dr. Clenchey visited Russell Street on Wednesday to present each third grade student with a personalized dictionary. The Empowering Families team had their first event of the year. 23 families participated in the virtual family coding night on Thursday evening. At Russell Street, the fifth grade students recently participated in their annual Battle Field Day, which is a group project where students study battles from the American Revolution and then create replicas of said battles. My sister participated, and she says it was a very fun project, and she's glad she did it. The middle school recently had their first in-person musical since before COVID, and their production of James and the Giant Peach was a great success. They want to wish congratulations to everyone involved. You did great. At the high school, December 14th, their Term 2 progress reports were posted, signifying a halfway point through the second semester. The high school had its annual winter concert, which consisted of performances from the concert band, the chorus, the beginner guitar class, and the jazz band. It was very exciting to have the first concert since the pandemic, and it was a great success. Winter sports have officially started. Those participating in athletics have begun to have their games and their track meets, and everyone is so happy to get back into the groove of things. This Saturday, December 18th, the National Honor Society is hosting a gift wrapping and babysitting event from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the high school. Parents are encouraged to drop off their Christmas presents at the high school for National Honor Society members to wrap. The National Honor Society will also be babysitting at this time. If you would like to participate in this service, the National Honor Society asks that you provide a donation of at least $25, and the proceeds will be donated to Meals on Wheels, which is a charity that provides meals to those who cannot make them themselves. We hope that this service will be taken advantage of. The high school's ongoing Tiger Tech program, which is a service that provides tech and help for senior citizens, will take place Thursdays in the Littleton High School Library.
That's excellent. Thanks, Stella. Dr. Clenchey, you want to tell us a little bit about the December 20th vaccination clinic?
Sure. Our third clinic is going to be held on December 20th at middle school cafeteria.
It's the Vaccinate company, so they'll be vaccinating approximately 120 individuals by appointment only, no walk-ins this time. The available slots filled up quite quickly, I have to say, within an hour. So there's still a need out there. There will be another clinic offered by the Board of Health next week. They'll be offering Moderna-only booster shots. So we're continuing to offer clinics to community members, and we have some planned in January as well. So our vaccination rates are going up, and that's a good thing considering that we're constantly looking at new variants that seem to be cropping up from all over the world. So we're very pleased with what we've been able to do. Excuse me, as Stella pointed out, we have lots of great things happening in our schools, and lots of opportunities to really get back to what we were doing pre-COVID. It's really nice to see our music programs having performances, and our people involved in drama clubs having plays, etc. And Stella mentioned Lucy Calkins' writing program, and I have to tell you, I was in a grade 2 classroom today, and they were celebrating completion of part of the writing program, so they were sharing their stories. And talking to the teacher, Mrs. Steele was in there as well. The improvement in writing was incredible. So this program has already started to make a difference, and we're just getting into it this year. And as we all know, giving our students opportunities to write and teaching them how to write and improve writing is a key skill that we want to instill in our children. And they were really excited to share their stories today. So it was a real treat to be part of that class today. So, Mrs. Steele, do you have anything to add about the program?
I think you summed it up wonderfully. Our students are really excited to be part of the writing and all of the writing that is happening. It's really exciting for the students and for the teachers. And reading the books today, I mean, these are second graders, and there were pages and pages of books. It was quite impressive, so it was really great to be a part of it today.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? So that's at the second grade level. Is this something, I know you reported to us about this before, is it being rolled out grade by grade by grade, or is it all going in at once? Or how's it being implemented?
Great question. It's actually, so the program, Lucy Calkins Minutes of Study, Writers Workshop is what we're doing. It's going in K to 5, all at once.
All at once, okay.
And so it is an adjustment, right? So our 5th graders, our 4th graders, our 3rd grades, they don't have the previous years. So it is an adjustment. It's definitely a learning curve. But people are doing fantastic with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. This has been years in the making. We've been looking at writing programs for at least 4 years and trying to get everybody on the same page, K to 5, which is not easy to do. And we finally were able to choose a program that everybody felt had a lot of merit to it. So it's exciting that we're going to be doing the same thing, K through 5, when we're teaching writing. So excited about this.
When you said get everybody on the same page, was that a joke, or was that just?
It could be.
Can I ask a question about the vaccine clinics?
Sure.
You mentioned the one on December 20th. That one, the 120 slots are full. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And no
But you mentioned the Board of Health is doing one next week.
Yeah,
as
I
well.
believe.
Do we know the dates? Do we know anything about that?
22nd, isn't it, Dorothy?
3 to 6.
3 to 6. And it's at the
Hall.
multi-purpose room at the town hall.
Is that reservation only as well?
They just released a link for appointments, and it's just for 18 and older, and they're getting only Moderna.
Okay.
And that's just the booster?
Just for boosters.
It's a booster clinic. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
I think we sent something out today, didn't we? Okay, good.
To our staff.
To our staff. But if any of you are interested, just let us know.
Thank you.
And that's it for acknowledgements or recognition.
We'll move on to, sorry, Justin.
You packed a lot in there, Kelly. Thanks very much. My only question would just be on the Vax bus or the Vax clinic that's going to take place. Is it the school administration that's providing this, or is it in combination with the town or the Board of Health, the one that you guys are doing?
It's in combination with the town. We're
Okay.
continuing that partnership.
I just want to thank, the administration and also the town, because everything I'm reading is you got to make it as easy as possible for everybody to access the vaccine. And I just want to acknowledge that you guys are doing a tremendous job with that.
Thank
And
you.
the fact that it's sold out, I think, is indication that we probably need another one
Yes.
as well, and then once we don't have sellouts, we can probably continue to slow it down. So
Yeah.
if you wouldn't mind just trying to keep it going and we can get these numbers as high as possible, but I do want to thank you for all of your efforts. It's been a tremendous success.
Appreciate that. We're gonna continue to advocate, and you know, our 5 to 11-year-olds, they were incredible. They were awesome, getting their first and second shot. So I mean, it's a team effort, and it's just really nice to see students that age just know how important it is, and they were really real troopers. You know, having the therapy dog there and our mascots, and it was a great evening. And Park and Rec also brought some movies to watch while they had to sit for 15 minutes after their vaccine. So I mean, anything we can do to make this, for lack of a better word, palatable to our younger students. I mean, it's great. And I saw nothing but smiles after they were vaccinated for the most part, which is incredible.
Okay, we're going to move on to presentations from the Littleton Water Department on the groundwater testing they're conducting.
And Corey, should we here?
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Corey.
Hi, everyone. Am I able to share my screen here? Let's see. Okay, let me get that up. All right. Thanks for having me tonight. I apologize for a little bit of glare in the background here on camera. I'll try not to take too much of your time, but I do want to spend a few minutes providing some background information that I think will be useful context for the following slides. So I'll jump in here. So a lot of you might not be aware, but the water department actually samples 56 groundwater monitoring wells around town for 106 different contaminants throughout Littleton every summer. And the reason we do this is to protect our public water supply. It's part of our proactive source water protection program to make sure that the aquifers supplying the public water supply wells in town don't become contaminated. Now I know this map's a little bit small up here on the screen, but if you can see 3 locations where there's blue triangles, that's actually where our public water supply wells are. That's where virtually all the town gets its water from. And then the purple shaded areas are essentially the aquifers that are supplying the water to those wells. So the underground water that flows towards the wells as we pump them. And then the little yellow dots that are spread around, those are the monitoring wells, the 56 that I mentioned that we sample every summer. We also obviously sample the public water supply wells, but the purpose of the monitoring wells is to, provide an early indication of where there might be contamination before it's able to migrate all the way to the public water supply wells. Right, so another piece of background here. So there's this family of chemical compounds called PFAS, or per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which is why we like to say PFAS instead. And it's a family of chemical compounds. They're used in a variety of products for the past 60 or 70 years. Firefighting foam is one of the major products, but they're also in all kinds of household goods. It's in waterproof furniture, waterproof clothing, non-stick cookware, things like that. Unfortunately, over the past several years, it's been found that these substances, when they're ingested, can cause a variety of different health effects. And so the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection set a limit of 20 parts per trillion in drinking water on these substances a little over a year ago now. Now at the water department, we knew this was coming. It takes DEP a couple of years to develop new regulations like that. So we knew it was coming. We had gone out and sampled all of the public water supply wells well ahead of that, and actually found the PFAS in our Spectacle Pond well back in April of 2019. And so at that time, we had immediately took measures to reduce the levels below the then anticipated Mass DEP limit. And in the summer of 2021, which was just this last summer, we added PFAS to the list of contaminants that we sample at the groundwater monitoring network, which I had shown on the previous slide. So in addition to those 106, we added PFAS, started looking for that throughout town, seeing where it might be coming from. So this map is similar to the previous one I just showed you, except now it's a little bit bigger, and each of the monitoring wells is either green or red, depending on whether the PFAS levels at those wells are below 20, which would be the green ones, or over 20, which would be the red ones. And so you can see it's in several locations around town. I'm only here showing the monitoring wells that we actually sampled for PFAS this past summer. So for this first round, this first summer, we chose just one monitoring well at each property to sample for PFAS. All right, so one of those locations that was in red happens to be the Littleton High School. It had levels of 30 parts per trillion. So look, 10 more than the 20 that Mass DEP is regulating it at. Now I want to reiterate that the elevated PFAS levels are in water under the ground, not in the drinking water at the schools. So it's not a public health concern. And also, since the high school specifically doesn't happen to be located in one of those purple shades, the Zone 2 aquifer protection areas, that 20 part per trillion drinking water standard does not apply. However, we do obviously want to keep an eye on the situation, and so we'll continue to sample for it each summer here. But again, no one's being exposed to it at the school. It's not a public health concern. It's just purely an environmental concern. Is PFAS in the groundwater, which is several feet below the surface. There's no way for anyone to really be exposed to it. Now, the middle school also has PFAS levels over 20, and it happens to be located within the Zone 2 aquifer protection area. So the Mass DEP drinking water standard does apply here. So this means that the condition needed to be reported to Mass DEP within a certain time frame. So the state was notified last Wednesday, December 8th, and DEP, for this kind of thing, they don't respond immediately. It'll probably take them a few weeks, maybe even a couple of months before they get back to us with instructions on next steps. What they'll probably do, they'll likely ask that some additional sampling and analysis be completed in order to determine whether the PFAS originated at the middle school or more than likely actually migrated there from some upstream site. That's the more likely explanation, but that would require some additional sampling and analysis to determine. So we would wait for their direction before taking any additional action. So the school department's not alone in this being in a situation of having to report this contamination to DEP. There's also 3 private properties, some of those other red dots you saw on the screen earlier, that also had to notify DEP based on the sampling that we conducted. All right, so that's basically the gist of it. I do want to reemphasize the PFAS in the groundwater does not pose a health risk to the students or staff at the schools, because both schools use drinking water supplied by the water department, not their own private wells. And obviously we work very diligently to ensure that the water we provide is safe and reliable and meets all state and federal drinking water standards. And as always, we'll continue to work closely with the school department to assist with next steps once we hear back from DEP. And that's really it. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay. Thanks, Corey. Sorry to go around. Someone, any questions?
I'm all set. No.
Justin?
Sure. Hey, Corey. Just out of curiosity, is one of the issues that it's difficult to remove the PFAS from the water supply? So if I remember correctly, we were sort of like diluting the water supply over the course of the summertime, where we had an excess PFAS level to bring it back down, and therefore if we have PFAS above and beyond certain thresholds here, that it's going to be difficult. Like how do you bring it back down, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, so in the public water supply, we're required obviously to bring it under 20. So when we discovered it at our Spectacle Pond well in 2019, our immediate action was to blend water from another well site with that water in order to, like you said, dilute it, bring it below 20, because that was the quickest thing we could do at a reasonable cost. And then, so that was just a temporary solution. And the permanent solution was to build a new water treatment plant to actually remove the PFAS from the water. And that's under construction right now. and that's on Whitcomb Ave. So that new treatment facility will be completed in probably a year and a half from now, and that'll be treating water from the Spectacle Pond well and the Whitcomb Ave wells, and actually removing the PFAS. It is very challenging to do. It's expensive. That's a $30 million project right there. But that's for the public water supply. For school properties or even other private properties that just happen to have some PFAS in the groundwater, that kind of remediation is not typically going to be required. It's typically, like I said earlier, DEP will ask probably for some additional sampling and analysis, most likely determine that it migrated from some other site upstream, and then basically just document the condition and leave it as it is, because the only real threat is if it contaminates the public water supply, which we're already treating for the PFAS. So.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Jen, any questions?
No, thanks.
Brad?
Yeah, thanks, Corey. It seems to me that your explanation just then was really helpful, and the fact that it may take the state several months to reply means that this is something to monitor, but it's nothing urgent. Is that
right? Yeah, that's right. If it was some other contaminant, they would respond much more quickly. It's something that was like I said, like some kind of urgent public health threat, but that's not the case here at all. Now that everybody's sampling for PFAS around the state, they're finding it virtually everywhere, because like I said, it's found in so many common, household products that it's all over the place.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Corey. Obviously, we'll be interested to hear updates as things progress. But I appreciate you coming in tonight and giving us the presentation.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Too, Corey, thank you for all that.
Yeah, greatly appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay.
So Nick Lawler, General Manager of LELWD, and myself will be releasing a press release tomorrow morning to our community and media in regard to the findings.
Great.
Thanks, Corey.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, this brings us to new business, public health metrics. Have an update from Katrina Haggard on what's going on in our community and border towns.
That's the final one.
Steve, I emailed you the slides. Steve, did you get the slides? I just emailed them. The problem with doing this in person is that I'm often finishing right at 7:30. You guys are used to thinking I'm all done forever.
All right, give me a minute and I'll get them and I'll get them out. So I guess keep talking.
Keep talking.
Tell us a joke.
Improvise. Come on, it's easy.
This is where my husband would shine. Or my daughter. I don't know.
It's hard. It's not easy. Come on, keep us entertained.
Any plans for Christmas, holidays?
Hoping to see those family members. Things go well.
Oh, that's good.
Planning for it, mitigating as much as we can.
Now, you saw James and the Giant Peach. Was it all what Stella said it was?
I saw it 3 times. I loved it that much.
Why did you go see it so often, Katrina?
My daughter was on the stage. She was one of the aunts. I'm very proud of her and all her friends.
That's great.
It was great.
They were good. Very, very good.
They were good, actually. I was thinking last night at the concert and the stage performances, the high school, everything. It's nice to see everyone doing their things they love. That is right. All right, so now we'll hit right off from the start here. So this is that front page, or not front, the second page of the Mass BPH's website. This is the 4 main metrics they continue to map for us. And as you can see, statewide, all 4 of them continue to trend higher, specifically after Thanksgiving. Cases have increased. The 7-day average is now 3,400. That just continues to tick up almost every day. Test positivity increased to 5.4%. 7-day average of hospitalizations has also increased. It's now about 1,300 per day. And deaths, unfortunately, have now caught up, and they've increased to 22 per day, which is, of course, nothing like last year in terms of deaths, but it's still notable that this is a doubling in the last month. So on the next page, slide, this is that CDC community transmission rates Their metrics look at the last 7-day period. So the case rate in Middlesex County is now 365 per 100K. For a long time there, we were just over 100, around 130. So we've really escalated in the last couple of weeks. And the percent positivity for Middlesex County is 3.7%. It's one of the better ones in the state. We're doing a lot of testing. And then the next slide. So this is a slightly different way to give you perspective on the case rates by age group. This is through that whole period of time since the DPH has provided the data by age group in a public setting. Every age group, as you can see, is trended higher since the middle of October. At this point, 5 and 9 and 10 to 14 continue to have the highest rates, but at this point, they're peaking above what we saw for the 20 to 29-year-olds over the last holiday season. So we've had a marked escalation in rates by age group for all of them. Unfortunately, our younger age groups are leading the way right now. And in fact, the 0 to 4, 5 to 19, 20 to 29, 30 to 39, and 40 to 49 have all doubled over the previous 2-week period. So from the 2 weeks before Thanksgiving to now, there's been a doubling. So just to give you perspective of what we look like over time and where we are. And then if we go 2 slides later, we have Littleton's number of cases reported over the last 14-day period. This is the 2-week period ending December 11th. Littleton had 68 cases. The prior to period, we had 53 cases. That's the time frame that ended just after Thanksgiving. So that might have been a little impacted by the Thanksgiving reporting. But again, we're starting to go down and we've gone back up. We go 2 more slides. 1 more. There you go. So this is those trends when we start looking at other areas around us, just so we can see what rates look like when we think of a slightly bigger area where we can see trends because it's more stabilized with more people. And then so Littleton's average daily incidence rate for this last 2-week reporting period ending December 11th was 49.8 for 100K. And that is higher than it was the prior 2-week period. And all of the areas we track have trended higher. And rates for Middlesex County and the state have actually nearly doubled from their pre-Thanksgiving to now period. And Littleton's test positivity this week was 5.6%. That is higher. And test positivity for all of these areas that we track also trended higher. So we are seeing the statewide trends continuing to go up. We're seeing our local area also following suit. So we're all doing this together. So the next slide is the slightly different way of looking at this. This is that CDC community transmission rates over this last 7-day period. So this is the slide I just showed you a 2-week period. It helps with some smoothing, many bumps if there's slight differences between 2 weeks, but this literally looks at the last 7 days on a 7-day period. And so this is for December 5th to 11th. And when we look at the case rate on the 7-day scale, we see that the rates for the state, Middlesex County, and Littleton actually are kind of steady from what they were last week too. So we went the week right after Thanksgiving, we shot up and we're kind of holding. And the state information that's more recent makes me think we're going to back up again. So leading into the holidays, we might we're in a very different spot than we'd really like to be than we were, especially before Thanksgiving. So all 3 areas, again, remain classified as high community transmission areas. We look at our school data. This is the Littleton Public Schools cases over the last 6 weeks. So this is as of today. These are the health notification letters that are sent by the school and also compared against the dashboard that you guys created just to keep it ongoing. So far this week, we've had 10 cases, 2 at Sugar Lane, 5 at Russell Street, 1 at the middle school, and 2 at the high school. But if you look over the last 4 weeks, this week compared to the prior 3, we're kind of in the same range as we were. So we're holding, we're not improving, we're kind of holding. And then if we do the next piece, this is the piece we are doing well on. Littleton at this point has 81.7% of all Littleton residents fully vaccinated. and 12% are partially vaccinated. There's around 6% of our community that is not vaccinated, and a large portion of that is the 0 to 4-year-olds. So hopefully they will be eligible for vaccines. It was anticipated sometime maybe in February or early next year that they would get access. So we're hoping that comes through. But the increase in fully vaccinated people in our town actually over the last couple of weeks is really due to that 5 to 11-year-olds who began to receive their second doses. And they are actually starting to become officially fully vaccinated as of this week. The ones who had that first clinic, got their second dose right after Thanksgiving, are now officially fully vaccinated, which is great. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll see these 5 to 11-year-olds actually hit that fully vaccinated status, which will help with things like quarantines.
Katrina, can I ask a question,
Yeah.
clarifying question there? So right now, do we know how many of those partially vaccinated 5 to 11-year-olds have had 2 shots and we're just counting days? Or do we know those who are waiting for second shots in the arm?
So the state reports them as in they get shots in the arm. So the 340 is of fully vaccinated are those that the state has record of. In
2 shots plus 14 days.
No, it's just 2 shots.
Okay, so that's.
This is why I keep adding, mentally saying, you need to add 2 weeks, you need to add
Okay.
2 weeks, because it's easy to forget that. The
Right.
state's metric was always just shots in arms.
And the way we count as a school district, you're not fully vaccinated until it's the 2 shots plus 14 days. So this partially vaccinated number are people who've had 1 shot but not a second shot.
Yes,
So those people need a shot plus 14 days
to become
for us to count as fully vaccinated.
correct for the
Okay.
school system, for them to reach that status for the schools.
Thank you.
There remain some kids in the 16 to 19 age bracket, as we know from the estimates you guys got directly off the high school, that are eligible and just haven't been vaccinated yet. So I'm not sure how to reach them or how to have discussions with them. I think that is a group that, given Omicron and some waning of, or how it impacts the vaccine, not only the vaccines, but also prior infection is not as protective. And I know a number of those kids are saying, I was already infected, I don't need to get vaccinated. But that is, reinfections is becoming a key metric with Omicron, and it's something that I would love those individuals to have a discussion with someone about, a trusted individual about whether that's vaccination at this point makes sense.
Can I ask another question? I'm sorry. Do we have the data, or will we have the data to let us know how many people have booster shots as well? That's a town?
That's a great question. The state is not reporting booster shots by municipality, as far as I'm aware. There was something the state as a whole had, I think the last time I looked, it was like 30% of all eligible individuals had received a booster shot. It's lower than we would like. So that boosters given Omicron are actually really highly recommended. Everyone should go get their third shot, or second if they got J&J. So Omicron's coming, it's definitely evading immunity, but it's also something I wouldn't want to meet, given that spread is happening easily. I wouldn't want to meet it on a naive immune system. So if you haven't had vaccine and you haven't had a prior infection, you're definitely at an increased risk of getting infected than those who have had a prior infection and or vaccination. Okay, keep going. So entering into that public health messaging, which I kind of just started, it's very clear COVID spreads where we share air. So, and this newest variant, Omicron, is spreading incredibly fast. It's doubling in days in other countries. And we kind of fall like 3 weeks behind Europe. And they are getting slammed right now. And we're seeing that the impacts in like New York City are starting to get slammed. So it's here and it's spreading. And so it's really going to stretch our essential systems across the board, I think, not just healthcare, but everywhere. And so it's really a real threat to our communities. We can't try to do what we can to keep spread down.
Janet, can I ask you though, I get that it's more contagious. Is it less severe? I mean, that's what I've been reading, is that the actual outcomes of getting the Omicron variant are less severe, resulting in, asymptomatic cases, very low symptom, mild cases. Is
that correct?
I've definitely read the same headlines and the information. I would actually say that we don't have enough information at this time to actually say that. I think the initial information that was coming out of South Africa was really much younger people, people with prior infections, people with vaccinations. We're becoming cases, and so all of those things will help lower the severity of infection. And then there's other evidence. Some of the studies were done in ways that introduce something called immortal time bias. So the people that are more severe got kind of censored out of the data, and so it made it look more mild than it might be. So we just need more time. And I truly hope that it is less severe. Like combining a really highly spread transmissible virus with something that's severe is just going to be terrible, horrible, like a nightmare. So it would be great if it was not as severe. And the other thing to keep with severity is, so the virus may not have mutated to itself being more virulent, more severe, but it depends who it also infects. So the host conditions, if you will, that can be host of an individual, their age, their health, immunocompromised status, things like that, but also of the community. So demographics and prior infections, vaccination, all those things. So that's why we keep like pushing those vaccines as much as we can, because we'd like to keep people out of the hospital. But yeah, I would argue, well, and the other piece of something that's this transmissible is even if it is half as severe, if it's 2 to 3 times as transmissible, we'll still have the same slam on our healthcare system, just because the number of people who will hit that severe category, especially as it gets to older age groups, will still put strain on an already strained healthcare system. So that impacts severity and outcomes too. There's just a lot here that's a lot of components to that same question. It's not just everyone's asymptomatic. I don't think everyone's going to be asymptomatic. Sure. Just like we've seen prior.
So Katrina, you would think that by the time we reconvene in January, we'll have a lot more information on what we're going to be seeing?
I think there are scientists around the world who are just working their butts off right now trying to learn that. So yeah, every week that passes, it's more information.
I wanted to ask another follow-up question. You talked about reinfection. That's something I've been trying to do research on my own, and it's surprisingly very hard to find data on reinfection.
And part of that is because it's hard to like document the first infection.
Yeah.
It's starting to come out.
Okay, I would love if you could share anything going forward that you find about that, because everything I've found says it's like it says it's possible to be reinfected, but there doesn't seem to be any data, like none around, or even any evidence that it is actually happening.
So I think with Omicron, given that it started in South Africa and South Africa has been slammed wave after wave, they've actually had a lot of prior infected people.
Okay.
And so I think that was one of the surprising things about this variant in South Africa is they were seeing reinfections. Okay. And especially people infected early on with the wild type, the alphas, the more time that passes, the more likely they were to have a reinfection. So at least from the preliminary data I've seen. So so our immune system gets trained every time you have an exposure, whether it's vaccine or infection. Your immune system kind of does its, pre-training for like your basketball game. You're like getting really physically fit. It's like ramped up. And it's, just imagine all those muscles our immune system is growing. And so every exposure it has, you get a little stronger. And so if you've been have a reinfection, and then at this point you're like, okay, let me get a vaccine, you're really boosting your immunity at this point. But that infection will probably protect you somewhat, and more likely from the severe disease, hospitalization, death kind of thing. The same way a vaccine, if you've trained your body that way, it will do so as well. So if you think about the flu, we through our lifetime have had multiple exposures to it from the time we're a child until the time we die. We will keep, on average, every 5 years, we get infected with the flu. So over time, our body's storing up all of those different mutations of flu, and we can have a response that's a little more robust the next time we understand.
I do. I mean, the point what I'm doing this research that I'm trying to get to in my head is like, well, it's unfortunate that here in Littleton, we've had as many cases as we have, and, you know, throughout the country and the world as well. The sort of silver lining to that is that there's immunity being built up. I think that, you know, however many people in our town have had COVID, those same people have now an added layer of immunity. I'm not saying they're immune and they should absolutely get vaccinated and boosted, you know. If they're
Yes, every
eligible.
increment counts.
But, you know, the fact that we're not using, pre-existing infections as a metric at all in terms of protection layers, because it's now significant. Maybe 10% of our town has had the virus, and that's another layer that people naturally now have. So I
do
wonder if
think
there's a way to
given,
keep that as a measurement.
I wish it was a way to measure it officially, that this person's had infection and this one has had vaccination, this one's had both. But our country, we didn't have enough tests at the beginning to actually say that this person had an infection. So we're still playing catch up on who was actually infected and how to measure that and at what level is it meaningful. So if you do thinking like some of our vaccines, we have titers to know when our immune system is waned, or if we even had an exposure to something like, I'm thinking chickenpox. I didn't get chickenpox as a kid, and my doctor didn't believe me when I was in my mid-20s, and I was like, I didn't have that ever.
I was the only kid.
Yeah, and so they did the titer to say, oh, you actually don't have a previous infection. So that's one way of measuring it, but we don't have those systems built yet to be able to say that. And I know there are other countries who have documented it probably better than we have. And they have health systems that are more connected through national healthcare systems where that can be marked on something that then is meaningful. But our system is so scattered, it's really, we have 50 states doing 50 different things, and it's hard to.
Right. I get what you're saying at an individual level, we don't have that record keeping, but I mean, we're on a macro level within our town, for example, if we know that like 10% of the town has already had the infection, that's 10% of our town that already has that natural mitigation layer built in.
Yeah,
It's just something we could consider as we think about risk.
Yeah, I just think it's really
benefit.
careful to keep in mind that there is an overlap between those vaccinated and those infected. So it's not the 82% plus 10%, and that's what we have in town.
No,
I think it's really important to recognize that it's an overlap. That number. So there's a smaller percent who have had prior exposures, probably built immunity, but we just don't know what that number is. There's no way to measure it, right?
I'm joking. That's where, because it's 82% fully vaccinated, 12% partially vaccinated. If we can agree that it seems likely that some of that remaining 6% were often people who had the infection before, that to Jen's point, that means that they're not as protected as they would be as fully vaccinated plus boosted or just one shot, but that is some sort of filter.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yes, we want to keep pushing both of those things.
Yeah.
I think with Omicron showing some increases in reinfections, getting to those people who've had a prior infection, just to say, let's have a discussion, and then you can choose, would be great. Yeah, it's convoluted. I wish we had a better measurement on those reinfections, honestly. But we don't. All right, any other questions? I have a couple more slides. Okay, so I do think it's important just to touch tonight on that our contact tracing system in our state is changing. The contact tracing collaborative that our state has relied on since early 2020 is actually winding down by the end of this month. And those contact tracing responsibilities are shifting back to local health departments, which for us is Neshoba Associated Board of Health. And talking to Jim Zareffi, local contact tracers have been told that they will reduce the number of contacts to each case to one call, and they are to leave an educated message of this is what you do, or talk to whomever answers. So if you see the Neshoba Associated Board of Health number pop up, you talk to them, so you can get all your questions answered. So what does that mean for us? The state's really shifting to an individual being responsible for notifying your own close contacts that you've had. If you are a case, you should try to remember who you've been with 2 days before the test if you were asymptomatic, or 2 days before your symptoms started if you were symptomatic. So this mass notify is actually another tool that can just help assist us with contact tracing in the state. It is a cell phone app, basically, on your smartphone that you can opt into. It's under your settings features. It says exposure notification. You can turn it on. And when you opt in, your device then shares the anonymous codes with others who have opted into the system. And it uses Bluetooth to do that. And there's like random codes that are only retained for a certain amount of time. There's no personal information. I know that was one of my original concerns, and that has no longer concerning to me. And so then if one of the random people you've shared these codes with over the last 14 days goes into the apps and says, I'm a case, then those people, anyone who's opted in and been in contact with that person will get a notification on their phone that you've potentially been exposed and this is what you should do. So it's another thing to say, I have an exposure, maybe I should go get tested myself and just check for symptoms for the last 2 weeks. So, another tool in our toolbox. And I have another slide, 2 more actually. So this, I know a lot of people have been asking lots of questions about who's eligible for what, boosters, vaccines, whatever. I put this on here just to help try to flow chart to help make sense of it all, especially for me. So if someone is 18 years and older and it's been 6 months since their Pfizer or Moderna, then they are eligible for a booster. If they get J&J and it's been at least 2 months, then they can go get a booster. Otherwise, schedule your booster for when you hit those marks. Most recently, our children age 16 to 17 are now eligible for boosters. At that high school age, if they get vaccinated 6 months ago, should go seek a Pfizer booster. I accidentally left Moderna in there. I will fix that here. And then children aged 5 to 11 are eligible for their primary series for Pfizer. They're not eligible for boosters yet, but those 12 to 15-year-olds are reaching that 6-month mark of where immunity tends to wane, plus there's Omicron. So we'll see what happens over the next couple months for them. And unfortunately, our 0 to 4-year-olds are still waiting for their primary series. Coming soon, hopefully. And then the last one is my reminder before the holidays. So some of the recent studies that have about Omicron is that it's been suggesting that when Omicron enters your household, that family members are more likely to get infected than with other past variants. It's just that much more transmissible. It does it more quicker before you can react to isolate anyone. So if someone is a case in your household, you should really be, even if vaccinated or a prior infection, should really be watching everyone at this point, just to see. And we know households are one of our primary settings for exposures and spread. So I think also we're looking at our rates that are going up, presence of Omicron, holidays, which I know are really important to lots of people who are looking forward to celebrating with family they may not have gotten to in the past. I think it's important to start really thinking, prioritizing your gatherings. So if Christmas with your great grandmother is important to you, maybe pass on that drinks and friends in a bar a couple days before Christmas, just to try to limit your exposures leading up to that. And then use all of those tools that we've talked about a million times. So get vaccinated. If you get boosted this weekend, you have that 7 days when that immunity really starts to hit its peak right after 7 days. So then you'll be hitting that peak right around Christmas. Use rapid tests. And I'm seeing things with Omicron that it should be done just before you're gathering, like you used to do them 24 hours before, a couple hours before. May not be as predictive of who is infected at your gathering anymore. So just use them right before people walk in the door kind of thing, or as close to departure as you can. At this point in time, everyone should really ditch the cloth masks. They're not great. And we should all be opting for better quality and fit ones. So surgical masks that fit well, KN95s, N95s, KF94s, all of that. See, Brad, love it. You can put your investable one over the top. That will work too. But there's actually a website that just started, a nonprofit called projectn95.org, has been vetting these KN95s, those kind of like higher filtration masks. And they're now selling them online to the public, not just healthcare providers. So visit projectn95.org if you want to see some information on that. Other things to do is open your windows, use HEPA filtration, leave people outside. And if you know you're sick or someone has had an is sick in your household or anyone has symptoms, even mild ones, it's really probably a good year to stay home. so we don't accidentally spread it to grandma. No one wants to spread it to grandma.
Thanks, Katrina. You don't have to go back to the slide, but my question is related to, we all understand that cases are going up. Cases are going up among school-age population children. But what's interesting is that cases aren't going up in Littleton Public Schools. We've been pretty level for the past few weeks now. We kind of have the same number of cases. Do you think that that's like a statistical anomaly, that our sample size is too small, like we're comparing all of the kids in Massachusetts versus just 1,400 kids in Littleton? Or do you think it's evidence that our high vaccination rate is helping the situation?
I think our high vaccination rate is probably helping the situation. It also could be that we had a little peak before the holidays versus after, so we might have adjusted some of that a little earlier than the rest of the state.
But I mean, those cases are really like,
They're escalating.
They're like doubling, tripling, it's exponential growth. In Littleton,
if we can keep
we're doing
it
great.
here,
We're like humming along, at the, you know.
Well, the number, Justin, I'm sorry, the number I noted, because I noticed the same thing, is over the last 6 weeks, we've had 5 weeks. We've had 5 weeks between 8 and 11 cases total in our district.
Yeah.
The 1 week was 16, but for 5 of the 6 weeks, it's between 8 and 11.
Yeah.
And so I was noticing the same thing, the comparison between.
So my point is, it's not been 4, 8, 16, 32. It's really compelling data that
It's very true.
we have a high vaccination rate among our population. We're seeing something different in our school system. Now, the time frame may be too short. It might be statistically anomaly that we don't have like a large enough population. I think time will tell, but I just wanted to.
so Lynn just pointed out, she did the number crunching for me. When you look at it as a month-by-month basis, there is an upward trend from November to December. We're only halfway through the month.
For the high school?
For the high school and Russell
for-
Street.
And for Russell Street.
So if you take into account we're
Sugar
halfway
Lane.
through December, we still have,
And there's something in the water.
we're on pace to be higher for those two
Right.
schools.
Right.
Maybe it's worth. Do you want to just throw the slide back up, just so we can look?
I'm gonna pull the month-by-month here. But I don't have a high school.
Take me a minute, hold on a second.
And then the other thing that I wanted to just ask you about, or sort of to share with the committee, was, you know, I know that the 16 to 19-year-olds, there's 15% of them that aren't vaccinated. And I gotta think that maybe half of them have had a previous infection. And that's the reason, and they're also sort of at the age where they're not adults. I mean, the 18-year-olds, the 19-year-olds are, but like the 16 and 17-year-olds can kind of tell mom or dad, like, I've been vaccinated. You know, I don't know, everyone's household's a little bit different. I wonder if there's anything, Kelly, we can do to sort of just get some information out to the high school population that just says, you know, a vaccine plus a prior infection is all that much better. And then I also just want to highlight, of course, that our master plan is at some point to be able to offer mask optional for those that, you know, we actually have a plan in place to incentivize people to get vaccinated. And I think, you know, when the time is right and we can put that in place, I think we'll see that number move. We'll see people say, yeah, you know what? I had a prior infection, but now you've got a carrot for me to go get. I will go get vaccinated because life is better without a mask. You know, and we would all appreciate not wearing a mask.
I appreciate what you're saying about the high school might have more cases, but we only reported 11 cases for the high school for the entire last year.
I'm just talking about across the district. Like, you know, 16 we had a spike, but 8, 8, 9, 11, 10.
Yeah, what your statement just a second ago about high school people more likely to have a prior infection, we only counted 11 last year. So that's not a significant, that's a small part of that remaining number of 16 and 19-year-olds to be vaccinated. So just.
But you wouldn't show any that came in during the summer?
Right.
Summer,
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
We didn't.
But we also were so low over the summer and had so few cases in town in general
We didn't
that
have
we didn't have
enough testing before. I mean, you know,
I understand where
We
you're
didn't
going,
catch
but
all
I
the
think you
tests.
need to be careful with that statement unless you get measured, I had a prior infection.
I mean, we don't want people to get COVID.
Right.
Ideally, we want to get everyone.
when I look at the 16 to 19-year-olds, there's something different going on there than the 12 to 15-year-olds and the 5 to 11-year-olds. There's something different among that population.
As is difference among their parent age group and their grandparent age
Yeah,
group. So there's
so-
something in town that is different, I agree. I can't explain it by prior infection, given that numbers.
According to the data that was given to me since the beginning of the year, in high school, we've had 31 positive cases. Now, that's not separating staff from students, that's just total cases.
But this is the number that caught my eye earlier.
Yeah.
The 5 to 6 weeks between 8 and 11 as a district. The stability, no, that's looking back, not looking forward, because the situation's changing. But that does give me some comfort that we've stayed stable even as in that population at least, even as the other numbers are moving more dramatically.
Yeah, I do. So from what Lynn just pulled, the high school had 6 in September, 6 in October, 14 in November, and as of mid-December, we at 6. So maybe that will balance to be the same as November. Let's hope. And then, so I noticed in Russell Street in November, we had 3 weeks of escalating rates because it was clear that there was a doubling was happening. And that is off of this graph right now. It's like, you're not seeing it because that 6 was the peak for Russell Street.
I will give a plug for Test and Stay because we caught in November many of those cases in Test and Stay.
Yeah, Test to Stay has been awesome.
And my sort of last, just sort of follow up on some things that were said. Maybe you're not like the most qualified person, like the open window concept. I get that the windows should be open, it helps. Do you know if they need to be wide open?
And I don't need to be wide open. Some of the data I've seen.
The classroom temperature does not need to be the same as the outside
Correct.
temperature for this to work.
100%.
So, I think that there's even opening the windows just an inch provides air
There's some
exchange,
metrics or
plus
some
the
modeling.
HEPA filters, plus
The modeling that I've seen is that little inch crack in a couple windows in a large space is enough to get enough fresh air to help dilute it, and then you have the HVAC pulling in fresh air, and you have the HEPA filtration cleaning the air,
Right.
and the combination of those things are powerful.
Yeah, I only bring that up because temperatures are coming down. We're on the budget committee, the cost of heat, it's going up, plus the kids are going to school every day in sweatshirts and jackets and hats and
And we want
saying-
them to want to learn in that setting.
Right.
So.
Yeah, if we could maybe not
teach them.
excessively open the windows, that would probably be a good thing for the learning environment.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're watching that as well, and you're right. And our heating bill is going up. We saw a $10,000 spike as soon as the colder weather hit from the previous year. So having windows open does have an effect on energy consumption as well. So
It's a balance.
Can I ask a question about a different topic? And maybe it's for Dr. Clinchie and for you. You mentioned that
Are we done with the screen, just so that
yes,
people at home can see it? Okay.
All right. You mentioned that the contact tracing process has changed at the local Board of Health. If I recall correctly from those letters I received from the school central office, it talks about in consultation with the local Board of Health. How is that process changing going to affect our ability to do contact tracing within our system?
it's not actually going to affect it at all.
Okay.
We do virtually all of the contact tracing. Our consultation is just to say, this is what we have. Is there anything we need to be concerned about? So
Great.
we could actually probably start a company on the side. We're so well-trained in contact tracing.
Lynn says no.
Yeah,
It's true.
I'm not really suggesting
From
that.
early on, all ourselves.
That was my suspicion, but I just wanted to hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
Thank you.
Good
that is
question.
true. When as they phase out the contact tracing collaborative, local boards of health are still instructed to assist schools or other local places where clusters might form. So schools being one of them. If you think COA, if you think Parks and Rec, if you think sports groups, things like that, they should be available by call if anyone has questions and needs assistance.
Thank you.
One
Yes.
more. Just give me your best guess. Like, when is the Omicron surge happening and when's it going to be over? Like, use your crystal ball. Just give us your best guess.
I hate you. No, I don't actually. I knew you would ask
Second
this,
that.
actually.
Yeah, take a pass.
January 18th through February.
Yeah, actually, you're not wrong. I think going into this winter, I personally, for my own mental health, was imagining the same exact curve that we had last year. And that started to decline in mid-January and kept going down through March, came up a little bit and came back down again. And so I think in my head we were following the same path. So my head, just to like compartmentalize and to get through the day, was saying, we'll be fine in January, it's fine. When I also knew in the back of my head, everything's changed. And so Omicron's really thrown a definitive curveball in our direction, and also our society is more open, we have more things happening, we're mixing more, it's winter still, all that stuff. So it will surprise me if we start declining in mid-January, the way we did last year.
Yeah.
And it kills me to say that.
But, so to follow up on Justin's question and also what you just said, Katrina, don't we envision this to probably be the way we will live for the foreseeable future? There will be variants, right? We're seeing that now, surges of variants. There'll be seasonal surges because of conditions about people staying indoors and people mixing with friends and family over the holidays. Isn't it likely that we will see this as a pattern? I would love to, of course, we would all love a crystal ball, zoom out 10 years and see a chart that's not like this, but it's like the 10-year chart. It's going to be up, down, up, down, up, down. Isn't this probably something that we will be living with in these patterns for our lifetimes at least?
Yeah, I think for the rest of our children's lives, we're going to be seeing seasonal surges.
Like the flu.
Like the flu. And probably in the same time frame, the conditions are similar for how they would spread. So it makes sense to me that at this time of year, especially around holidays, when we gather with others, we're going to see that up and down. It wouldn't surprise me if we need a yearly booster to do whatever is coming, just like the flu. We see other coronaviruses, not COVID-19, have that same pattern. So it would not surprise me if we are living with COVID every year for the foreseeable future. And we adapt to it. That's why you have vaccines, and that's why we might wear masks for a certain period of time or whatever for short term. Now, the question of we're going to live with it like it is right now, I think I really hope we're not living with it surging like this is right now, because this is really disruptive to societies and our all of our essential services, including schools and staffing and healthcare and our essential workers and getting foods on shelves and transporting things. Like all of those things are going to be really strained by this. And so, no, I don't think like right now is what we're living with the rest of our life. I think as more COVID circulates and more people are infected and vaccinated, our bodies get trained, we react differently, and it will go down over time. We're going to see these little, like, each wave might be a little lower.
As in virility, or?
With, number of people.
But also, would you project out that, like Omicron, if what they're stating, what they're seeing is true, that it is a milder case, that over time, as more people are infected, that we will probably see milder and milder, similar to what happened with the Spanish flu.
Yeah, so every time, like I said earlier, every time our body gets an exposure, we react less severely the next time we see it again. And it's just that this is so new to all of our bodies and all of our communities that we keep getting these like huge spikes that keep kind of coming up.
But not only just our bodies reacting, but as the virus itself could potentially mutate into a less viral.
Yeah, so the virus is going to randomly mutate and try to find those pockets where it can keep spreading. That's how it stays alive. And over time, it doesn't want to kill everyone. That's not what it wants to do, because then it can't go anywhere. So over time, most viruses get less virulent. But I can't say there won't be another one after this that suddenly is more severe just because it found a pocket to like mutate and take advantage of. So it's a yes and no answer. Like, yes, we're going to be dealing with this forever. No, I have a hard time envisioning us dealing with this in this way forever. So like we still have, in order to deliver those services and things that we really value, being able to see friends, whatever, we still have to figure out how to do that while keeping spread minimal at this point and using our tools like vaccination, testing, masks, ventilation, all of those things. We just kind of put up some roadblocks in the way and lower the number of people. But this thing is, I am worried. this is going to be a rough period. I think actually for me, this is going to be the roughest period of all of it. We have a lot of tools, but it's going to take advantage of any gap in the system. And honestly, mental health wise, that's going to be the hardest part. Seeing that happen.
For sure. Any other questions? All right, thanks, Katrina.
Thank you, Katrina.
Appreciate the update. Give us, be interested to see how things progress what the landscape looks like when we reconvene in January. Okay. That moves us on to our mask flexibility request to the Board of Health. For those of you who may have tuned into the Board of Health last night, Dr. Clenchey and myself spoke with the Board of Health about getting a conditional waiver for the period of January 18th to February 4th to do a 3-week trial period of unmasking for vaccinated students at the high school who are part of our testing program, and by giving parent permission to do so, 18-year-olds would be able to make that decision for themselves. And we were able to come to an agreement that they voted conditionally as of right now. They are willing to move forward with it, with the caveat that should the landscape look different or be concerning, they can push it out to a further date. But all things being equal and in good conditions, if everything looks good, then they are on board to go with the 3-week trial period, which was, I think, all that we could ask at this point. I think we do have the mitigation in place to successfully run a 3-week trial, but I do understand with the current situation, what we don't know about Omicron and the holidays, that they're hesitant to give a rubber stamp approval and just say go for it. But they did tentatively accept that time period, and as we move closer in January, we'll have a better idea of whether we'll actually be able to do it in those dates. But they agree that the goal is to eventually, at some point this year, when the time is optimal, to implement a 3-week trial period at the high school. I think it'll be good data. Anyone else have any thoughts on that?
I do. I have quite a few thoughts. So I didn't attend in person, but I watched the recording today. First and foremost, honestly, I want to thank you, Matt, and Dr. Clenchey for the work that you did last night. I think that you both really represented us and as a committee, and also, you know, the families of our town really well. I think so. Thank you. I think you guys made some really good points. I have some notes here that I just jotted down. There were three concerns I have about last night, what I heard and saw at last night's Board of Health meeting. First, so our town, as we saw earlier tonight, we reached that 80% vaccination, fully vaccinated threshold. And if you remember, when the Board of Health put the indoor mask mandate in place, they stated, and it's written, that there were two potential, it was an either or, two scenarios where the mandate would be lifted, either an 80% town vaccination rate or some weekly case over case, you know, flat non-increase, whatever it was. We've reached that first situation, and that was not brought up last night, and I regret not being able to dial in and ask them about that, but it wasn't even alluded to. So I think that's something that's important that we just in general should hold them to and ask, you know, what's going on with that. At least let them respond to that question. The second thing that struck me was that one of the Board of Health members asked a question, which was asked, I think, today by you, Brett. Hey, what's the percentage of booster, like folks in each age range that have had the booster? It's a fair question. But the follow-up to that question was, is a person considered to be fully vaccinated if they've just been vaccinated and not gotten the booster? And the answer was yes. And one of the Board of Health members said, wait, I don't think that's really how it should be measured. I think that for practical purposes, I believe was what was said, for practical purposes, someone who's been vaccinated and not gotten a booster should not be considered to be vaccinated. And that's a pretty strong statement. I don't think there's any action follow-up from that, but it's an interesting and powerful thing to say. And to me, it paves the road for a potential slippery slope where we start to change the definition of what fully vaccinated actually means going forward. So that's a concern that I have, goalposts being moved and moved again. And then the third point is, Matt, you brought up a great point about mental health issues with these kids. We saw it in our survey results. We got lots of comments from students about how these masks make them feel, the anxiety, the stress, the lack of communication capabilities, et cetera. And you really represented that well, and you were interrupted by a Board of Health member who said, wait, how do you know that stress isn't being caused by the fear of COVID itself? And that point was pushed pretty hard. And, did you ask in the survey whether the stress is being caused and the mental health issues are being caused by the masks or by COVID? Well, no, that wasn't the point of the survey. We didn't ask that. So that was kind of pushed pretty hard, and that concerns me because it's not the first time we've heard that from the Board of Health. Well, really, what's the detriment of these masks to these students? I don't think they really, some of them, they're not one unit, but I don't think some of them really believe that there's any downside to keeping students in masks potentially indefinitely, and that's really concerning to me. So, I think we all on our committee agree that we'd like to see, under the best circumstances, these kids out of masks sooner than later, but I'm not sure that sentiment is shared, and that concerns me. So overall, with these three things taken together, I just worry that the Board of Health could potentially be kicking the can indefinitely down the road. I'm glad that they said they would reconsider this in January, but I'm worried whether that's really going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Certainly, I remember to my point last night, I think that the Board of Health looks at it as what the actual disease has an impact on health-wise, but I do think in a lot of ways, they need to be a little bit more aware of what is happening in our schools with mental health. Now, do I think that wearing a mask is the sole reason kids are feeling depressed or anxious? No, but it is certainly a facet of the anxiety and the depression that we're seeing. There are many things. The worst thing for the kids was staying at home last year. I dealt with it. Many kids just, that was a really tough time not seeing their friends. They got the social piece. We've gotten that back for a lot of the kids. That's the most important to me. But to dismiss, to say that the masks don't impact the child's mental health is, I think, a dangerous thing to do. I think it's certainly something that needs to be considered, along with public health and other things that are being brought up by the Board of Health. And I think that, we are aware, but I do think as representatives of the town of Littleton, it's in their best interest also to find out what's going on in the schools, find out what kids are seeing. I live it every day because I work in a school. I see these things. And I have children in the school. But sometimes you lose touch with things when you're not directly interacting with that part of it. And I think, like I said, I have that same concern. I think, given the unknowns of January, I think there are also legitimate concerns on that side, whether it's optimal time to unmask and people being, I hope that we are able to do it. I think I want to get kids unmasked, but I think that we all have to be understanding of all of our perspectives. And I think the only way we're going to get through this is to work together as boards and get on the same page. So, I would like the Board of Health to be understanding of all the areas that we're coming in from, and us to make the effort to see sometimes what they're seeing. And it's we got to. Everyone's got to give a little bit and see, because this is something that we're all into together. And I just worry we can't have, we have to have open minds, all of us, Board of Health and school board, select board, all of us together to see what's going to work.
I really feel we made some, excuse me, headway last night. We had some good conversations. We're pretty close to agreeing on the conditions and the recommendations that we sent to them were well received. There's one that we need to really take a look at again, but I'm optimistic. I understand their hesitation to a certain degree because of Omicron, and if you look at and I know you have the 2020 data on COVID infection rates this time of year, that they do spike. We just don't know how high they're going to spike. So I think they're just being cautious. But the fact that we had a 5-0 vote makes me feel pretty good, in terms of what we accomplished last night. I know there's always a debate. It's the only word that really fits the conversation as to what do we need to do to stay ahead of the virus, and we have very divergent viewpoints on that. And we don't know. We have booster shots. Hopefully they'll be the winning mitigation strategy. And my prediction is similar to the flu. We're going to probably need a booster shot every year, and it will not be the same booster shot instead of ingredients. And I think that's how we begin to try to control this virus as we move forward. We're all in agreement, and at least I felt that way even with the Board of Health. They realize we can't continue to do what we're doing forever, and something's going to have to change. And we can't live our lives in masks whenever we are indoors. Maybe it'll be a seasonal thing. I don't know what the future brings, but as we all know, it does affect every one of us. It affects us as adults. If you wear masks for 8 or 10 hours a day, and then get a couple of hours of fresh air, and then throw a mask on like I am tonight, you do feel it. It does affect you. And I hope everybody recognizes that wearing a mask do hinder a number of things, including communication. But I think it also it just hinders how you feel after a period of time, and that does need to be recognized. Could you put the slide up, please? I've been thinking about the conversation about one of the conditions last night, and you could tell that I really was struggling with the doubling approach that they have. We're dealing with a small population, and sometimes concepts that are applied to large populations don't necessarily apply to smaller populations. And when we look at our data, we've had times where our cases have doubled in a school, but our numbers are so low, it doesn't take us long to bring that number down. I haven't seen exponential growth, and we're really not talking about exponential growth as far as I'm concerned. And I haven't seen a continuation of doubling over a 3 or 4 week period either with our data. Our data looks really good in terms of over the last year, since we've been tracking our data in real time. So I've tried to figure out, well, how can we come to an agreement, everybody feels good about the solution. And the number that ended up in my slide is the wrong number, and it should be 3 rather than 4. So 4 wouldn't be as conservative as I would like to see. But what I did here is I just kind of combined what we both want. Should the weekly case count, and I put in brackets, should be a minimum case count of 3 positive cases, double for 2 consecutive weeks. Masks will be required. And then if the case count for any given week reaches 11 or more positive cases, mask wearing will be required until the weekly case rate is less than or equal to 10 cases. Now I picked the number 3 because if you double 3, you're going to end up with 12 cases in a 2 consecutive week period.
You got it.
And 4 was a little rich for my liking, so I was trying to be a little more flexible, but I couldn't live with it. I'll put it that way. So I think that, I don't know, I need input from you as a school committee. Is that a compromise you can live with, or?
Walk me through the specifics. So week 1, so the week before we start
Right.
the trial period,
Right.
the kids all get tested on a Monday.
Right.
Okay,
those
the
things.
tests
But
come back.
There are tests, I'm sorry, there are tests, there's the pool testing, but then there's the actual number of cases that we have.
Okay, so
So-
going into week 1 of the trial, we know how many cases there are
Right.
of kids in school. So if, so go through that. So if there are 3,
Well, I mean, we had talked about this before. What happens if we have no cases?
right?
So I think there needed to be some type of benchmark established and something that we could live with. And really, 12 cases in 2 weeks is pretty close to 11 as far as I'm concerned. So I feel comfortable with that, is because I know with the data that we've had, we've been very successful in gaining control of COVID numbers in our schools, with our mitigation strategies when we had those numbers before. So I feel comfortable with that range, so to speak. I think I'm not willing to give up the numerical range. I think that's really important, and I think our community has spoken to that they want something that's tangible, and the doubling isn't tangible, because let's say we had 8 cases the first week, so we'd have 16 the next week, and then 32. Well, that's pushing the envelope, in my opinion. And I'm not comfortable with that. But I understand the concept of doubling. And again, you're not going to hear me mention exponential growth when we're dealing with our district in terms of infection rates. I don't believe it's going to happen. So I'm just trying to get the best of both worlds here, and I'm not sure whether I hit the right combination or not.
So this is fine with me, but it's just 2 ways of saying 11 or more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to get my head around.
Because 1, 2, 4 doesn't get us there, 2, 4, 8 doesn't get us there,
Right.
3, 6, 12 does, or just any 1 week where it's 11 or more.
Right.
Right.
I'm fine with
If
this.
we start with 3 and then the next week there's 10, we've maxed out and the masks go
Oh,
back.
no, it would have to be 11.
We have to get to
Yeah.
11.
It's
Oh,
greater
okay.
than or equal. It's
Okay.
greater than 10, not 10 equal.
Because the Board of Health thing only applies 2 weeks in a row.
Okay.
I think we're all saying the same thing. I'm in agreement. I think this is the type of thing where we can agree to disagree with the Board of Health, and we're both getting what we want.
Right.
So
Well, that's the hope.
they can have their doubling thing.
Right.
3, 6, 12, and we can have 11 or more.
Yes.
And we're kind of in the same place.
Right.
Yeah, it works for me.
Works for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
So need a vote or just direction?
Well, I think direction is fine, and I'll just change that to 3 and send it off to the Board of Health, and when we meet on the 12th, we'll have that discussion again. So, thank you for that. And when I look at these conditions, I mean, again, I'm conservative, but I feel pretty confident that if something started to go off the rails, we'd catch it right away, and we could bring it back. And I think that's what, personally, I was looking for, to make sure that I felt confident that when we went into this trial, we'd be successful. And I think those conditions do that. And then down the road, we can review these conditions and see, whether we need to decrease them or alter them or whatever. I mean, there is one area that I don't have an answer to yet, but we talked about the number of students that have had COVID and they can't be in a full testing program for 90 days because the PCR test will pick it up. What isn't known at this point in time, and I can't get any answers to this, is what does it mean if you've been infected? I know your antibodies build up, but can you still be contagious? Can you still transmit COVID-19? I would like some clarity as we move forward on that, because I'm struggling with students that have had COVID. They have a decent antibody count to fight off COVID, yet they can't take part in mass flexibility because they can't take part in full testing for 90 days. And I think for this trial period, we're fine, but when we go beyond that, I think we're going to need some answers to what do we need to do to ascertain whether or not we should not include them in the mass flexibility.
So
component
just to
moving
clarify,
forward.
I get that those people who've had COVID within the past 90 days can't do testing because it'll come back positive, but are we saying that those people then can be flexible and remove?
Not at this point in time, because you have to be part of the pool testing
Right, but can't
program.
we ask for an exemption for them for that reason?
I brought it up last meeting, kind of at the tail end, and there's nobody that's grabbed the hook at this point in time, but we can bring it up again.
It's not fair.
Well, this is where we we do have some time, right?
Exactly.
With January, we've got time, we have a month basically to make a more convincing argument if that's what we want to make. And then if we don't win that argument, we have an additional 3 weeks. Assuming from when we
Right.
start the test.
It
So we've
takes
got time
to
to.
work. It takes time to work these things through. And Katrina, I don't want to put you on the spot because I don't know if there's any conclusive data out there at this point in time. I'm certainly not getting any. We've contacted DESE. I don't believe we have an answer yet at this point in time. And part of the challenge is mandated pool testing is not typically part of the mass flexibility trials that are taking place. So we're kind of unique in that area. So I don't know, Katrina, do you have anything you could add to
So just
the
so
conversation?
do you need me up there?
Sure,
Okay.
good mind.
No, you can stay, I can stay,
Oh,
okay.
Mike.
Don't listen to me.
This is all new to me. Just so I am clear, these are vaccinated individuals who had a breakthrough infection
Right.
and therefore would be eligible for the mass flexible
Right.
program.
But not with the condition that they take part in pool testing.
Yes, so my understanding from the state's definition is they do not get counted for the next 90 days. And at
Right.
that point, they're an antibody, they've got a booster on board with their infection plus their 2 doses. So I think it's worth a conversation, in my opinion, it's worth a conversation with the Board of Health to see if those kids could be exempt
Okay.
and join their peers in the program.
We can
At
certainly-
the time that this happened, whatever that is.
Right.
Okay, we can certainly bring it up.
And my guess is the number is going to be relatively small. So
Yes.
it's not going to affect the overall experiment, I don't think.
No. Well, I mean, we have, wherever my sheet, we have 31 high school students that, since the beginning of school, have tested positive for COVID.
But they weren't all
But though, well, no, we'd have to tease that out. So we're looking at, let's say 15% that weren't, so 50% of 31. Not that many.
I just want to reiterate that Kelly, we have some of the same notes tonight. This is good stuff. I do think it's important that we have a conversation with the Board of Health or we consult experts on this topic because we've touched on the mental health aspect of it. And to have a child that, no one goes out there seeking COVID, okay? Everyone's doing their best to avoid it. But to have a student that's vaccinated, parental consent, they want to get back to normal, they happen to get COVID, maybe they were asymptomatic, they got picked up in a previous pool test. And I have a personal story with my daughter recently. To exclude those individuals is not right, in my opinion. If the Board of Health isn't willing to budge because we've set some of these parameters, then maybe we have to live with it for the trial. But certainly once we get into full-time flexibility, I would not feel right and I would ask the Board of Health to wait. I mean, that just seems to be contradictory of where the Board of Health, they should be the whole child, the mental health aspect of this as well. I have a couple other questions or points. Is it okay if I keep going?
Sure.
Yeah.
We're roll.
I do just want to acknowledge that, we kind of got backed into a January 18th start date, and Katrina's presentation, some of my questions earlier, if January 18th is not shaping up to be a good date to start, I kind of want everybody to know at home and in the community, like, we're not going into this with our eyes closed. I especially want the Board of Health to know that as well. Like, we're looking at the same data, they're looking at it. In fact, I think we have better data sometimes than they do real-time data within the school system. So, our date was December 6th. That would have been a great date to start. We would have been more than halfway done with the trial. Things probably would have worked pretty well with that. Hindsight being 2020. January 18th is a long time to wait to try something, and I think that by the time we get there, there's a real possibility that it's not going to look good. So we might have to consider delaying the trial. We'll just have to wait and see, which is kind of what the Board of Health said last night. I think they would have been crazy to tell us no because that would have been unfair because there's so much time between now and January 18th. So essentially what they said was, we'd be happy to revisit this on January 12th. Which I think is fair. I also want to bring up, since we have some time, to Brad's point, to sort of rework the system, Board of Health member Kane seems to be really hung up on the idea of how do we know who's tested and how do we know? And a possible tweak, I don't want to open up a can of worms here, would be that essentially they get tested on Monday, the results come back Tuesday. The trial period would actually run Wednesday through Tuesday, so that you know that on Wednesday, you would have time to update the Aspen, those people were tested, everybody was negative. Wednesday is the first day that the masks come off. It runs to the following Tuesday. I actually think that's a better system, because to take the masks off on Monday and test Monday, it doesn't line up with how the testing works. And I think what we're looking to do here is add mitigation strategies and then remove one that isn't probably one of the stronger mitigation strategies out there.
We, just so you know, Justin, we had no intentions of taking masks off for the Monday during the 3-week trial period. The only time we would have somebody masked is if they missed the pool testing the week before, and then they would have to wear masks for that week. So I understand the Wednesday to Wednesday.
Right. The concern seems to be, so on week 2, the child missed testing. How do we know that that person has to put the mask back on? I think if you ran Wednesday to Tuesday, it would give you actually two days to get prepared for who that next week population is.
Yeah.
We
So
have to
minor
note,
tweak.
though, that first week, we're not testing on Monday.
Which
because
would
it's
be
a holiday, so it would be a
which would be fine.
Tuesday.
It makes it more flexible. And then this is kind of a question maybe for you, Kelly, like, do we need to revisit the student handbook policy that we put in place for masking? I took a look at it. I just wanted to bring up that maybe we need to revisit that, because it said something along the lines of all students will be masked, and DESE, federal, state.
Okay, well, tweak
It
it.
didn't mention anything about the local municipality powers.
Okay. I'll have Dr. Harrington align it with what we're doing. prior
Yeah, or
to
maybe
the-
we just, maybe it works, maybe it's fine,
I'll take a look at it.
And then, I think we're gonna get to it, but I wanted to hear about the middle school vaccination rate. But all in all, I think you guys did great work last night
Yeah.
in moving the conversation along. I do think that there's a disconnect between what's the Board of Health thinks is happening and what's really happening in the schools. These kids are carpooling to and from school together, athletic events, that type of stuff. There's vaccinated, unvaccinated kids mixing. There's socials after school. There's weekend stuff, like they're unmasked at lunch.
I think that's kind of the point that I was trying to get
Yes.
across, as far as that at some point, when everything is so, you press down too hard, you're going to have people resist. If you're not giving something in return, I think that you're going to have more people resisting by going out, and they're going to need that interaction somewhere else. This is a safe place to do it. We have the best tools possible to monitor and shut it down if we see any major increases. Like I said, I think the best tool we have is the testing. Getting kids involved in the testing program, I think is going to be what we need to do going forward while this is running its course.
Actually, not to interrupt you, and as I said before, my son is that one of those ones that is signed up and doesn't go. And I said to him, do you want to be unmasked? And he's like, yeah. I go, well, then you're going to have to show up and test. And he was like, okay, I'll test now. If that is going to be a reward for them, I feel like a lot of them are going to say, I'm going to show up for the testing, and I'll take that 10 minutes out of my lunch and test.
I did the same thing on Monday. I text my son in the morning, make sure you go down and get tested. At lunch, when I was lunch, go down and get tested. And he did. He hadn't gotten tested probably in 3 weeks because things were too busy. He's anxious about not getting a seat at the table at lunch. He's like, by the time I get back, all the seats are filled, and being social kid, and that is like a major concern for a lot of these kids, that they're not going to have a seat when they. So giving them something,
Back.
I think is going to help to increase our testing at the school. So I just think, like I said, you got to be a big picture person and look at everything. I totally understand what some of the Board of Health people are saying, Mike Zeldin, he has a background in virology and other things, thank you. Something I know nothing really about. I work in schools, so we each have our own little things that we can contribute. If we can talk things out, I think that we're going to, I think that's the way we're going to get through this and to become to understandings. And so I am hopeful. I was very happy that we did get a 5-0 vote to be open-minded and say if things are, if conditions are right, that we're going to go forward with this. And that I'm hopeful. So.
Just real quickly, I would point out that the mental health concerns are not just anecdotal. Like the Surgeon General, we all saw the report that a resident circulated to us. The Surgeon General this week referred to it as a crisis. And so that's something that we have to consider and hope the Board of Health does as well.
So would you like me to add an exemption for COVID positive students within a 90-day time period will be exempt from full testing? When I send
If
it
they're
back to the Board of Health?
vaccinated.
Yes, vaccinated, of course.
Yeah.
Exempt from pool testing and allowed to be mask
Well,
flexible.
that would be part of that.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I can certainly add that when I send it back, if you'd like me to.
I mean, like I said, for me, if that's not able to be part of the trial period, then but going forward, if the trial period works out and we have great success and this is something that we want to move forward with in the future, then to take them out of that equation is not fair.
Right.
So if they're excluded from the 3-week trial, that's one thing, but ideally I would like to have them included in that. But
So let's ask, and if it's a deal breaker, then we say, all right, let's do the 3-week.
I would actually argue if that's what you want going forward, then having them in the trial is important because you'll have data on whether
It's a good point.
they become a case, self-reported case later again.
It's a great-
Unlikely given the timeframe.
Okay, I'll
Don't
add
ask.
the condition.
Now you have two hand raised if you.
I do?
So you know.
Yeah, I'd really particularly like to keep it to the interested citizen portions of the meeting. Okay. We're going to move on to...
Matt, I'm sorry, I don't know if this is the right time to bring this up, but I did want to talk tonight about the COVID emails that are
The
being
COVID
sent.
emails, like, yep. So, yeah, there's been a lot of talk and people talking about, every time that there is a positive case within the schools, a letter is sent out to the community, notifying them of that. For me personally, I look at this in two different ways. For me personally, I don't feel that everyone has to be notified every time there's a COVID case because this is something that's going to be happening. And this is maybe the new normal, and I don't see this being continued on indefinitely into the future, that we're going to continue to be notified everyone once when someone tests positive. That being said, I think that in some ways it is a comfort to some people within the community because we did start doing this, and I just worry, my worry about taking that away right at this time is going to be, we want to move forward. Our priority is to do the 3-week no mask. People who are already concerned about that, to take that also away from that other layer, that's something security, so that they know what's going on. Now, yes, they can go and check out the dashboard, but I want to be as transparent as possible to the community. That would be my only thing. For me personally, I don't feel that there is a need to be notified. I think notifying when there's a close contact, that's the appropriate way that we go.
Yes.
Moving forward. Eventually, I would like to weed out the letters for every student that tests positive for COVID. I don't think they're necessary. But my feelings on this at this point is that I don't want to take it away at this time, just because I think it would look like we're almost not being as transparent as we could be with everything going on. But I'm more than happy to listen to other people's thoughts on it.
I mean, we had this conversation prior to the start of school, and I was leaning at that time to not sending those letters out. But when we started negotiating the MOA and talked about, what our citizens wanted at that point in time, it seemed like the logical thing to do was continue. I'm to the point, I don't think it's the right time now, but if case counts start going down in January, maybe February would be the right time to change the way we do business. We'll have to look at case counts, but I would like to phase them out. We have school letters that go out that are linked to regulations, and they would still happen. But when we started this, I'm going to call it an adventure, for lack of a better word, together, people really wanted to know what was happening at a district level. Our COVID dashboard is great. It's a great resource. I think we have the right recipe now, and I feel comfortable, even if we needed to at the end of the week, to send a quick email with a link to the COVID dashboard. But that would be maybe February or so. I do think we need to start moving forward, but not now. I think with our cases going up, with our desire to exercise mask flexibility at the high school, and if that works well, I think we'll probably want to go to the middle school next. And just want to make sure we set ourselves up for success in terms of it not changing too much too quickly.
Does anyone else have any strong feelings or thoughts on it?
I do. I think that when we began the school year in 2020, right? Oh, 2020. So we're dealing with this so long now, it's hard to even remember. I think it was meaningful. We didn't have any cases in the community, or hardly any. Geez, there's a case in the school system. I think everybody was curious. I think everybody wanted to know. I got to tell you, I think that there's more people that feel like they're being spammed. And I say that jokingly, but the emails come in, and Dorothy, we thank you for the work. I mean, they come in, and for the most part, they're meaningless. Like the message, we've lost the message, because if you're a close contact, you're being notified anyways. And people have said to me, I think it's important that you hear this. I'm being honest. People have said, I'm likely going to miss an important email because I get so many emails from the school that I just delete or ignore. So it's like the boy who cried wolf, like we're going to miss our opportunity to actually communicate something important to them because they're getting 2, 3, 4, 5 emails a day, which a lot of folks feel is irrelevant. I think that folks also don't have the ability to unsubscribe from this because it's going out to like an all-user or class email address, and if they did unsubscribe, they wouldn't get any communication. So I think there's 2 things you could do. If you want to continue to send emails, maybe folks could voluntarily subscribe to that type of service where they would be notified. Or you could, is it true that we're only updating the dashboard on every Friday still?
That's correct.
You could just update the dashboard every day. You can't? I'm getting a...
Well,
No?
we have limited resources, and remember, we're contact tracing.
And because there's a delay from, sometimes they're contact tracing, we're getting the information about the contact tracing, there's a day delay, there's a couple, yeah.
My thought there was, instead of sending a letter, which takes some time, the number could be increased on the dashboard, and then, every day it just gets updated. If you learn that there were more close contacts, you update it. And that way, if people wanted information, it would be readily accessible for them. But at this point in time, Matt, we are being as transparent as possible. I'm sharing with the community and the administration here. I don't think the letters provide any value. I'm hearing from a lot of folks. They want them to stop. There's no way for them to get them to stop. And they're asking us, please stop them.
I had a friend say today that she deleted the TikTok email because she thought it was another COVID notification. And and so it's just anecdotal, but just as a very current example. We could send I think what a lot of towns are doing, what I'm hearing, is send an email at the end of the week with a roundup, just Friday.
Well, so
Transparent.
link to our dashboard.
Yeah.
Hey, I want you to understand, I don't enjoy sending these letters. I send them because it's an expectation, and it was a part of our MOA, and it did serve a purpose. I don't want to desensitize our public, but I'm gonna counterbalance of it. I know there are people out there that still want them. So let's be transparent here. There's people that don't want them. There's people that want them. I can't create a data bank that's selective because it never works when we're dealing with disseminating that kind of information. So, Brad?
I agree that stopping the flow, changing the flow of information at the moment we're trying to experiment, it's bad optics. Whether it's bad policy or not, it's something else, but certainly bad optics, and we don't want to create distrust when we don't have to. I wonder if there's a way, though, instead of sending 3 separate emails, if there's one email that says, so instead of getting the 3 letters from Shaker Lane and the one from Russell Street and the one from the high school, if there could be just one message, just a daily, this is what we saw, and even if it comes out the next morning, so yesterday these were our cases, and so it's not 10 emails a week, it's 3, it's 4, it's something like that. I don't know how that affects staff time. I don't know about that part of it. I do think there are people who still want this information, and I know the Board of Health is asking for it. As Justin said, the school cases are the most real-time information we have in our town, and so I see some real advantages. I like to see it as a parent, not just as a member of the school committee, but I don't necessarily need to get 7 of them. This got this letter, then 3 hours later got another one, then another one. I wonder if there's a way to at least to keep the daily communication or as needed communication, but to focus it a little bit.
I mean, we could look at doing that. I mean, we already do that in the sense that we combine as many students as we can in a school per day, but we're separating students that have no close contacts from students that have close contacts. So I mean, we could experiment with it and see how it goes. It's going to be not as easy to understand, but that's what we have our dashboard for.
And again, the link to the dashboard, and I don't know if it needs to be a PDF every time, and maybe it does for whatever reasons. But if it's just an email, hey, yesterday we had 2 cases, one at the middle school, one at the high school. The one at the high school had close contacts. That's the message.
I mean, we could shorten it, see how it goes. It's up to you. I mean, again, I have plenty of things to do.
Sure.
So, I mean, again, I think there's different views. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree they're unnecessary. I don't. My issue is with the optics piece of it, and I also know for a fact that there are people out in the community who do want to see these letters, and we're asking them to trust us on moving forward with going, unmasking for some students. I think it's a big ask to then take that also away from them at the same time. I don't want to see us sending these letters endlessly. And I would like to move in that direction. If there's a way to shorten it, I love Justin's idea of, signing up for the notifications. But if that's not something we can do, then, like I said,
we in all honesty, parents, we've tried these things many years, and they don't work because you always end up missing people that want to be on it. So we have structured emails. So really, the shortcut is look at the lead to the email. You don't even have to open the email up. I tell you what's happening right in the subject line. So there are shortcuts. Whether or not you read it is entirely up to you. But I'm willing to, because I would like to see these things phased out, but it isn't the right time. We're going to try to combine them into a letter at the end of the day and see how that goes. If you're fine with that, if you want to keep it as is, we can try that.
Did you have something to say, Katrina?
I do. I have I completely understand we get a lot of them in our email and people are going blind to them, and I understand that. And so but this messaging about cases in real time being the first data we get for our town is actually an important layer of cheese. Government messaging and financing is one of those layers. And I know I have seen people who are annoyed by the letters, but then also change their behaviors that week for them and their kids, that then change potentially connections and numbers and potential spread. So to completely, and I was speaking to one of my own colleagues who's been told they have to go to a dashboard, and she just stopped going to the dashboard until suddenly she had multiple close contacts for the same child, and then was like, oh my gosh, we have a problem. So a dashboard gets forgotten. It's not, so if there's a way to find the middle ground between constantly emailing a separate email for every case and close contacts, no close contacts, if we could, the summary email twice a week might be a sweet spot in between to satisfy both of those things, like the not making people go blind and ignore them, but also providing enough information that people feel that they have it when they need it.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that if we can find a common ground and middle ground, I think that my worry about sending the emails out constantly is I think it can cause people who are inclined to panic to increase their anxiety about what's going on in the community. But I also see it as people who are just zoned out on it, like another email, and it just becomes white noise. So I would love to see us move into a half medium, see how that works out.
Sure. We'll start it next week, and we'll start with the summary of the day, and then after vacation's over, we'll maybe do it every second day or something. We'll play with it for a while, and then we'll get feedback.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the good thing about this is if it's worked, there was no doubt in my mind there would be a time where it didn't work anymore. It's just identifying that time.
I mean, to me, the most important thing is the close contacts, notifying the close contacts.
Absolutely.
So,
Okay.
but I think you have some
I should
direction.
actually ask Dorothy as well. Are you okay with this, Dorothy?
More work for me. You think it seems less, but it's not. Anyway, of course.
It is more work, but we can, let's give it a try, see what happens. And
I already have an idea of what I'm
Lynn?
I do, I think because the nurses, we have soft metrics, and the nurses are documenting everything every day. There's many, many categories in the spreadsheet. I think the half step would be, at the end of each day, being able to send Dorothy the information for the district. There's pros and cons, because then everybody's going to get if there's cases, that's, a high school parent's going to get information about a case at Shaker Lane.
Well, they already did.
We already do.
So
We sent them to everybody, so.
if they're already going out and they're not going out specific to schools, then what we can do is just have there be a table in the daily update. If there's no news is good news, you don't get an email if there's no cases. But if there's cases, it'll be a table and it'll have all 4 schools
Yeah.
with the.
Yeah, I think the table idea is, it's concise, and
a
once
mini
we have a table
COVID is.
created, it should be easier to do, so.
But I would recommend it get sent like in the morning, because then the nurses at the end of the day can wrap up and then Dorothy can send it in the morning.
I misunderstand what you're saying.
The nurses enter all of their data at the end of the day, so
Right.
the different dismissal times, it would be easier for them to then go up in the morning instead of,
Well, the only-
sometimes 5, 6 p.m. we're getting information about cases and inputting them, and we're trying to keep it on the same day.
People don't usually look at I know that, I don't usually look at my email at night either. It's usually first thing in the morning.
Yeah, like a little morning.
I guess I should quit emailing them.
Yeah, I don't see those emails. I don't see those emails until the
I
morning.
mean, I'm fine with that, but, I mean, we have people that want real-time data, and we just have to remember that data is a day behind, because when we're doing our trial, we're looking at case counts during that week, so we have to make sure our accuracy remains where it needs to be. So, I mean, it's just a change in mindset. We can do it.
It's still
I
a week ahead
read
of
it
the town
then, so
meeting.
I think it depends.
Thank you.
And can I just make the point that the school will still have the real-time data, like the fact that it goes out the next morning. I don't know, I get that some people are gonna change maybe their behavior, but it's unlikely that a lot of people are gonna change their behavior based upon the one email coming the next day. if there was a situation when we hit 11, you're going to make that change immediately. Or if you had a situation where we had a lot of in-school transmission and you were on the phone with Desi trying to figure something out, I
It's a
mean,
different letter.
Right.
it's a whole different ballgame is my
Different
point.
process.
Like, it has nothing to do with the letters at this point in time, so.
Well, let us work it out internally, and either it'll be at the end of the day or in the morning. I can live with either, as long as we have real-time data and we're not lagging by a day for our trial, because that could have an impact.
Since you included me, I just said no.
What's that?
The principals also send out a letter that follows up from me, so.
Well, that's an internal, that's a regulation that's tied to DESI.
Okay. I
So
just-
they're
you kinda
not
go-
sending it to everybody. And, I mean, you all aware, that I don't want to bring attention to this, but we don't have an MOA, but that's something we agreed to. So just so we're aware of that, I'm fine with moving forward with what we're talking about. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm actually excited about changing it up.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to middle school vaccination rates and MIS.
That's, Ms. Snow.
I think there's a slide, Steve, but it's pretty simple. We have 400, do you want me to stay here or?
You can stay there.
So we have 401 students enrolled in the middle school, and through the MIIS, we were able to confirm that 312 of the students are vaccinated, and 8 additional students, they opted out of MIIS, but they provided their proof of vaccination to the school nurse. So we have a total of 320 students. 57 out of the 58 staff are vaccinated, so that does have us at the over the threshold of 80% at the middle school.
That's amazing.
I see why their numbers are probably.
Something's in the water at the middle school. I mean, the
working.
data's great at the middle school.
Yeah.
Across the board.
After the PFAS, we should make this something in the water too, so.
Yeah, I know.
Water safe in middle school is our message here. Like.
And those sixth graders are just recently became eligible, or those who hadn't turned 12 yet, so that's a great number, and there'll hopefully be more of them vaccinated.
Right, when we checked this, like, I think a month ago, we wouldn't have, based on like birth dates and the number of students that were 12, we wouldn't have been able to get to that 80%.
So not to add something to your list, but we had spoken about at the last meeting, or a meeting before, about when middle school reached that number of 80%, we were going to apply to DESI for the waiver. For
I'd
that.
be more than happy to do that if you're
Yep.
ready to.
When with that said, if we are going to apply for it, do we do the masking at both schools at one time, or do we wait and only do one school?
I think for the trial
About
period.
To do the
just
trial,
Trial at the high school
do the high
first,
school and
then
phase in the.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least that's my opinion.
I think we should get the waiver, just to be
Yeah.
ready.
Yes.
Yeah, waivers, like, I think we get that in hand, so we have it, and then we choose to act accordingly.
Sounds good.
We done with the slide?
Yeah. Moving on, the case capital plan request. Dr. Clenchey is going to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Case Collaborative, for those of you that are fairly new as a school committee member, we belong to a Case Collaborative that says Special Education Consortium, the collaborative. For a number of years, we have 12 districts that are part of that collaborative. We are considered members. The governing board consists of the superintendents of each of those 12 districts. We do take in non-member students at a higher tuition rate. They've, like any collaborative, have had to retool in the past 6-7 years because a lot of districts, including our own, have had enough students to create our own programs rather than send them out of district. And we experienced that as new school committee members when we were talking about budget subcommittee. So what's happened in that time is they've retooled. They have a high school, and they have a building for their high school. Some of the new programs that they've opened up are not able to be housed in schools within the members of the districts. So there is a need now for a capital line set up in their budget. They've never had one before, but because it's a collaborative, they operate very differently than school districts. When we make a change to the way we budget, we need a vote from each member board before they can move forward. They need a 2/3 vote from all the boards to be able to move forward with this. I've been an advocate of this ever since they opened up the high school, which has been 3 years ago. When you own a building, there's maintenance and there's costs. When you develop new programs, there are costs to create those programs. So I would encourage the school committee to vote in support of the motion that they have there so that they can establish the capital reserve account, and that will be on their books from that point on when we have all the votes together, if it's at least a 2/3 vote.
Okay. So this time, any discussion on this?
How do we contribute
Well,
the money?
that's great. I'm glad you asked that question because we've been pretty conservative in that collaborative. And when we first started talking about this 3 years ago, a number of superintendents, including myself, I was the chair at that time of the board, we wanted to find efficiencies and build capital through the creation of efficiencies. And we've been able to do that. The next motion that I'm going to be asked for has a balance on that page that we actually have a surplus of $1.5 million in a transportation budget. So those efficiencies were gained through time. We provide a transportation of many school districts beyond the 12. It's probably it is the best transportation service for special education districts in the state. They've flourished, and as a result, they've made some money out of it as well. And again, last year with hybrid models and remote models, there were some savings incurred from keeping buses off the road, and that money accumulated. So it would be taken out of there. This is an FY21 surplus, and since I'm on the second page, the second motion would endorse the use of $300,000 to build a playground and also move the transportation office to a location where the buses are right there so they can be better monitored, and also a multi-purpose room which would be part of that high school as well. So they're asking for a total of $300,000 this year from the FY21 reserve, so to speak, to be put into the capital fund.
So this is money that's there, it's not newly appropriated money or anything?
Right,
Okay,
it's
gotcha.
money that exists.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments before we move to a motion? You want this in two motions?
Actually, by law, it has to be.
All right, so I'll move that we approve the establishment of a capital reserve account.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it.
And then I'll also move that we approve the Case Collaborative 2022 capital plan.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Motion passes unanimously. Okay.
And Matt, at the end of the meeting, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I'll sign
signing that last page, I can
We'll do that.
copy it and send it back to you.
Okay. That brings us to Beth Steele's going to tell us a little bit about our Tri-District PD Day.
Very happily so. We have some slides
Yeah,
with
give me a
some
second.
pictures. Thanks, Steve. So our cross-district professional development day took place on November 2nd of 2021. The planning team from LPS is Julie Lord, Natalie Proto, and me. And Julie and Natalie were not able to make it tonight, but I would be remiss not to give them a shout out of the hard work. This day is a lot of planning. We've already started for next year. And so the collaboration and the teamwork, it's a very enjoyable process, being able to work with the two of them. So I just wanted to give them, acknowledge their hard work and shout out. So on the next slide, Steve, please. This year was our 5th annual Cross District PD Day. It was hosted by Harvard, but it was a virtual format. And the day combines 3 districts, Air Shirley, Harvard, and us in Littleton. This year we had 434 educators participating in the day, which is really exciting. That's a lot of educators coming together for a homegrown professional development day. So you can see on the by the flyer on the right, the theme of the day was building an equitable learning environment. And we had 2 keynote speakers, Dr. Katie Novak and Mirko Chardin. And then later, after the keynote, we also had additional presenters, and I will speak about them in just a moment. Typically, in a day like this, we actually like to have educators facilitating and leading other sessions. But this year, we took a little bit of a different approach because of keeping in mind, and it's already been mentioned multiple times this evening, mental health of everyone involved. And so we adapted what we did and just kind of created these learning pathways in place of having educators facilitate and lead sessions for other educators. The flyer that's on the previous slide, just positive shout out to Paul Orzik. He is our library media specialist at the high school. He created that for us. He's done it the past couple of years and has done a fantastic job as creating that flyer for us. And then on the bottom left, you see the hashtag Lash Learns. A few years ago, we started using this hashtag, Lash standing for Littleton, Air Shirley, Harvard Learns. So we're learning together. And so we use that hashtag on Twitter in order to share out, communicate, and connect during the day. And I will say it goes beyond that day. Some of our departments and grade levels have maintained contact throughout the year, which has been a really nice positive that has come from this PD Day. On the next slide, so as I indicated, we took a slightly different approach to the day. We created learning pathways in which we participated for a good portion of the morning. So here you can see the schedule for the day. We started out with a very engaging and energetic keynote. It was followed by 3 options of learning paths. I'll go into those in a bit more detail in a moment. We then had lunch, and the afternoon was dedicated to creation and department collaboration. On the next slide, we see a couple of pictures, tweets from some of our educators that they put out during the keynote session. And so, as I said, Dr. Katie Novak and Mirko Chardin provided our keynote. It was a high energy keynote. It was the first time ever that I've actually been in a, and I think it's fair to say we've all done a fair amount of Zooms in the past couple of years. The speakers had a DJ. And it was like this fascinating, it was this really fascinating approach. I think Justin's going to ask for a DJ now moving forward school committee meetings. To kind of having this keynote speaker. And so the hour just flew by with that kind of nice addition that was a change of pace. So there was an active chat throughout the keynote while Katie and Mirko discussed equity and universal design for learning, which, as we know, is a district focus for this year and for the next few moving forward. What's nice about this is that this past summer, our educators had an opportunity to participate in a summer book study with other educators within district, but then also from Air Shirley and Harvard. The book is in the top left corner. It was Equity by Design, and it is the book by Novak and Chardin. So it was very nice for those that participated in that book study to then actually meet virtually the authors and see them engage and interact and share their knowledge. On the next slide, we dive into those the morning pathways that we did. And so in true UDL fashion, we provided some choices as to where our educators could go. And so there were 3 choices. We partnered with the Highlander Institute to offer cultural proficiency in SCL with Maeve Murray and Malika Ali. We also partnered with Dr. Alex Hirschberg to offer a session titled Building the Trauma-Informed Classroom. And then our 3rd session was actually a continuation of the keynote with Novak and Chardin. And so you can, again, see the use of Twitter, especially in a virtual format. It's really nice to be able to use the Twitter to share out and to acknowledge and just to kind of connect as the day goes on, different things that are kind of takeaways for a variety of educators. The afternoon was dedicated to reflection, creation, and collaboration. And so this allows for Java-like staff from all 3 districts to gather and share ideas, strategies, and to collaborate on something new that may have come out of the keynote or one of the morning sessions that they attended. This afternoon, the department grade level time, we have in the past few years, actually in the past several, have done it in unconference style. So it's really open for the educators to discuss the needs and wants that they want. So they bring to the table the topics of conversation as opposed to it being chopped down. So for example, in the picture here, it's a tweet from our Russell Street School librarian, Starla Hazen. She joined the 4th grade team meeting on the Cross District Day and shared about how she does the book a day. And she just kind of shared that, that program and what she does and how she does it and how it works in 4th grade. Many really enjoy this time together. It takes a little bit of time to figure out the unconference style. It's a little, it can be awkward at first, but then once people get into it and get comfortable with it, we now have educators wanting more of it. And so that to us is a really exciting sign of that collaboration. On the next slide, again, more tweets because we don't have any in-person pictures. Throughout the day, it's something that we started a few years ago, really to encourage engagement, connection, and just some good old fun during a PD day. We implemented bingo. And so some of the bingos are to share a resource on the Padlet, to exchange information with a colleague from another district, even some brain breaks of, get up and put your arms in figure 8, right? So just to kind of change things up for the day and allow educators to realize to get up and move away, right? Because being in front of a screen for all day is not what we wanted. And so that was an exciting part of the day, just to kind of keep engagement going. And then lastly, we always like to evaluate the PD day in order to have continuous improvement for moving forward. And so here you can see some feedback. Overall, we asked, how would you rate this PD day? You can see the responses are excellent, very good, good, are the majority of our responses. People have said that this was one of the best cross-district PD days that we've had. Presentation by Katie and Mirko was very powerful. And so then the other factor, right, is always, okay, we have this day, right? What are you going to do with the information that you learned in that day? And so in the bottom box you see there, and I loved the response. Someone put a whole lot, right? So we gathered a lot of information that day, and educators felt that they could turn around and implement something in their classroom. And so the gist is that it was a really great, successful overall day, and we really, Julie, Natalie, and I, just today confirmed with each other that we're actually really excited to continue planning and collaborating with Air Shirley and Harvard for the years to come. So thanks for letting me share about it.
Great job. It's really impressive. It's not easy to pull off.
No, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of teamwork. It's total teamwork. Yeah, from our team and then the other districts too. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're up. Jen, any other comments or questions before I move on to Mr. Austin?
I have a couple.
Okay, go for it.
I love hearing about this stuff, and we heard last year about the 3-district collaboration. I'm so glad we're able to keep that going, and the idea that you're doing kind of a macro UDL approach it's just good practice, right? I'm very impressed with that. Can you tell us a little bit more about the trauma-informed instruction? Because I know in my professional conversations we're talking about there's obviously kids from like war zones or kids who have like a trauma in their personal lives, but we're hearing and reading a lot about as a school committee is how this experience for the last 18, 20 months is introducing significant trauma to our students. Mm-hmm. How are you talking with other teachers and other districts about how to deal with a generation that's experienced common trauma?
Yeah, and generations,
yeah,
right?
Sure,
and
yeah,
that are experiencing trauma, because our students are experiencing it, but so are the adults, right, that are working directly with those students.
And often it's compounded whatever they've had in their personal life, their family lives, and stuff like that. Yeah.
Exactly, prior trauma,
sure.
Everything, yes. So definitely having a lot of conversations. And that day, I ended up not going to Dr. Alex Hirschberg's talk. I went to a different one. But the feedback that I received that day was that he provided a lot of direct strategies that can be implemented in the classroom. And so I think The direct strategies is what our teachers are really looking for right now with how do I support, right?
What specifically do I do tomorrow to do this?
Exactly. And he was able to provide some of those strategies. And then that's the beauty of the afternoon of allowing the grade levels to talk to each other. So then they're able to share, in a lot of our elementary grades, they have check-ins, right? When they walk in the door, they just kind of tap emoji in some classrooms, different faces in other classrooms. In other classrooms, they can put a sticky note where they're feeling, and their names on the back, so the teacher can identify, oh, I gotta check in with this student today, right? So there's a lot of different strategies like that, and being able to share and talk about those strategies with not only their colleagues within district, but out of district, because while we're all neighboring districts, we're all very different districts. And so it's kind of nice to be able to hear how Air Shirley educators are handling certain things and how Harvard educators are handling certain things. Just being able to share that.
I think that's great, and I'm so glad we're doing it. I hope in the future maybe we could hear how, because one of the things I really like about these days is how you have the social studies teachers at the 9th grade level talking to other social studies teachers at the 9th grade level, is how we're also making curricular decisions about works to include, not to include, types of assignments, that sort of thing. That's not the kind of thing that will change for tomorrow or even for next month. But thinking about how this kind of professional development can influence our curricular choices and decisions about materials, I think would be really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely the connection there, right? Yeah.
We found over the years, Brad, that every year that we continue this partnership, we find that teachers are collaborating with each other beyond the day, and they're working on materials and units together, et cetera. So it's been a nice opportunity to connect with other teachers that are doing what you're doing in the classroom.
Well, it's just, and it's just really valuable if you have a staff room of 6 English teachers or 6 5th grade teachers to multiply that times 3 means you get that many more perspectives and ideas.
Exactly.
I'm a real big fan of this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we talked about specifically the writing program, right? We started this evening talking about the writing program, and last year that was a big topic of conversation at the elementary levels of talking about, because we were still trying to figure out, or I guess 2 years ago, sorry. That was a big topic of conversation for our elementary grade levels of talking, okay, well, what's Harvard using for writing? What's Air Shirley using for writing? Do we want to go see them? And so that did directly impact that program.
Thank you so much.
Justin, or someone?
I'll just say thank you for sharing. This was wonderful. I'm so happy that the district's able to participate in wonderful full-day events like this. Certainly not tonight because we're late into the evening, but
Because we had an extra agenda.
I was just thinking that perhaps a future agenda item we could kind of talk about what happens at a lot of the half-day PD days, and that might morph into like a school calendar discussion and all that stuff, but just wanted to thank you for sharing, and I think it's wonderful, and just wanted to put it on your radar, Kelly, that maybe we could get a future agenda item for sort of the half-day PD that takes place and the PD that takes place on regular school days as well during the school day. That's it.
No, more than happy to do that. Student wellness is just a kind of a quick response to an email or 2 that we've had. Did you want to handle that, Beth, or do you want me to, or?
Yeah, Lynn and I can speak to the
Okay.
student wellness for a quick minute.
Sure.
Sure, yeah. So as we know, it's an ongoing conversation, right? Student wellness, staff wellness. And so we wanted to just kind of give a couple overviews district-wide, kind of this global view of what we are doing with regards to student and staff wellness and mental health. And so I have a couple, and then I'll toss it over to Lynn. And more detailed updates will come as we go into January, where principals can actually provide some more very specific details of what's happening within their schools and within their classrooms. But a couple of global view things. Firstly, some staff professional development. We partnered with NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And our staff had PD days, half days, so 2 of the half days in the fall were dedicated to NAMI presentations. On October 6th, it was the Allies for Student Mental Health for grades 6 to 12. And on November 17th, it was a presentation titled Trauma-Sensitive Practices, Fostering Well-Being in Elementary School Classrooms. And that was for educators in pre-K to 5. We have an upcoming professional development for our teaching assistants, and that is going to be with Jessica Minahan, who is a very well-known licensed board-certified behavior analyst, author, special educator, and speaker. And that will be later in January. In addition to those presentations, we've also this year adjusted our faculty-led PD. So just in timely speaking about your half-day request, which we can go further into another day, but just briefly, we've slightly adapted our faculty-led PD this year in order to take off of the plates of educators the creation and the facilitation and the leading of those half-day PD days. And so this year we created 4 main focus areas from which educators can choose in order to dive deep into those areas. And one of them is mental health, so to be able to dive deep into and find more resources and have time to create to be able to support themselves and their students. We know that our schools play a large part in our students' lives, but we also know they leave our schools at the end of the day, right? In the afternoon, they go home to caregivers, to families. And so we are including and inviting the caregivers and the families into this conversation about mental health. And so just this past Tuesday, we had NAMI, we welcomed 2 presenters from NAMI back for an evening presentation in which they shared their lived experience with mental health conditions and how this impacted and still impacts them to this day. And so we learned about mental health conditions, challenged misconceptions, and we were able to ask questions of those 2 individuals. And as we said on Tuesday during that NAMI presentation, this is an ongoing conversation. This can't be a one and done thing, right? We are constantly having these conversations. We're constantly having those one-on-one conversations with educators in the hallway, in the classrooms, and then at larger scale, district-wide as well. And the last thing that I will say before tossing it over to Lynn is that this spring we are looking forward to collaborating with the Parks, Rec, and Continuing Education Department to put together a 7-part weekly series with a speaker motivator named Brett Uchkunis. And the series will include the topics of overcoming bullying, secrets to being social, inclusion, how to make a mistake, the secret of kindness, and a few more. So keep an eye out for that. That's a collaboration between our 2 departments, which we're really looking forward to doing.
For what ages will those?
So it is appropriate for any. Most appropriate, grade 8 going down. And so for students and families. So it'll be a kind of a early evening event. So it'll, again, bringing everyone into that conversation into the picture. And Lynn, I'll toss it over to you.
That's great. So as Beth said, we're going to give just kind of an overview of things that we're doing in the district that are informing the practices, and we'll let the schools at the next presentation really drill down to actual initiatives and things that they're doing in the buildings. But I'll definitely give a few teasers. So a few things that we have been working on. We have historically done the Youth Behavior Risk Survey. This is something that we've been doing for a number of years. It's a survey that's administered in the spring every 2 years. The middle school was able to get the administration done prior to the closure, so we do have data that's being reviewed from the middle school. The high school administration was not completed in 2019, and in the 2019 administration, but it is going to be administered this year. The survey's in the process of being revised and in response to kind of currently what's going on in the world. And so we participated in a kickoff meeting and 2 planning meetings. So we have a meeting coming up on January 20th to finalize the questions, and then that will be administered in the spring. That's through Emerson Hospital. So also the signs of suicide survey that has been being done, we are continuing to do that. Grades 9 and 12, it was administered in November. In March, the 7th grade, it will be administered, and the clinical team is reviewing the data that we received from last year. One of the things that we had talked about last year that we are adding this year is the Devereaux Student Strength Assessment. So that's a mental health screener that we're going to be doing district-wide. So it's aligned with the CASTLE framework, which is just really looking at evidence-based social emotional learning strategies. The DESA K-8 is an 8-question, 1 minute to complete screener, which is really great. And then the 9 to 12, we have options of doing a mini screener, a longer screener, and a teacher report. So the clinical team is all attending the training to launch that on January 4th. And so we're going to start with the high school and then scale down from there. And so those are the things that we're really doing. And then in addition, for our students who are on IEPs and receiving services for emotional disabilities, we've started adding more screening tools to really gather data to inform our practices and document progress. And then I think it's going to be a great presentation to hear what the schools are actually doing in their practices. But I did attend the district-wide clinical team meeting just the other day, and a couple of the things that were just shared anecdotally, one of them is super cute, and I love that they're doing this. They're implementing a check-in system at Shaker Lane where students who want to check in with Anna Diaco, our adjustment counselor, they write their name and leave a paw for her in her office. So if she's off with a student or engaged or in session, the students can leave a paw, and then she will go find them when she's available. At the high school, they're doing some wonderful things. They're doing some group counseling. They're doing boys groups, girls groups on topics such as, anxiety, issues and current topics related to mental health, eating disorders, issues around just experiences kids have had through this whole pandemic. But they're also doing some drop-ins for the staff as well, which is really great. And then they're reviewing a tool called the Check and Connect, which is used for students that are at risk for disengagement. So there's certainly a lot going on, and the clinical team is definitely very, very busy. Always busy, but busier than ever, for sure, this year.
Thank you.
That brings us to the last item on our agenda. Just talking about upcoming presentations for our January 13th meeting. We're going to talk about the spring 2021 MCAS results, circuit breaker update on student health wellness supports, and we're going to have some special guests. High school teacher Bill Miskinnis' civics class is going to come to tell us a little bit about what they're learning and then observe a little bit about town government.
And we're going to take Brad up on his offer for the 2021 MCAS results. He'll have a little bit of homework. We're going to do a very brief presentation, and then we're going to just turn it over to you to ask questions to the principals about any of the data that you would like explained.
Great. So we'll look forward to that, and we will also have a better idea of what's happening with our proposal or our plan to do a 3-week trial period. And the next Board of Health meeting is January 12th, the day before. So I'm sure that'll be a topic of conversation. That brings us to our second opportunity for interested citizens. Do we have any hands, Dorothy?
I have done. We do. We have.
What?
Okay.
Turn your mic off. You got me here.
Okay.
Dorothy, you're not on mute.
I know. That's a first.
You new here?
Matthew Ridge, please state your name, your question, and your street, please.
Yes, Matthew Ridge, 325 Great Road. I got some questions. It's been on a few things that came through. It's been a long meeting, so bear with me on this one. When we were talking about the numbers that were for COVID, are we judging these numbers by the amount that have COVID versus the people that have been vaccinated that during that same time period, or are we having COVID numbers versus the population of the town?
I guess the only comment I can make, Matthew, is that the numbers we use are real numbers in our school district for COVID cases.
Well, no, I'm talking about when we said that there were 70 cases in town in Littleton.
Oh, that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
You're talking about when there was 67
The
cases.
68 cases are total cases over the population,
Over 2 weeks.
out of all, over the 2 weeks. So that would be the
That's not
period
count.
of November 28th to
Okay.
December 11th.
All right, because the thing is that if that is the case, then the percentage of people infected inside the town of Littleton is less than 0.7%.
For that 2-week period.
It doesn't matter, it's irrelevant, it's still 0.7%. The thing is that the numbers that you show inside, the numbers that you're showing are like the 5% and stuff like that, are based off of an entirely different number.
Oh, no, that is, so the 5% is the test positivity that the state publishes every Thursday. That is the total number of positive tests over the total number of tests conducted. That's a different proportion.
Exactly. But that's the point, is that we really aren't at 5%. We are at 0.7%.
I understand what you're saying. It's just different proportions.
Okay. But the thing is that we're going by numbers, and one is more extreme than the other, and people are afraid of what they're seeing, but it's still not what it. But that's what I'm pointing out, is that it is by the amount tested versus the amount that have COVID, not the amount of the population of the town. In other words, we have less than 1% of the entire population that has COVID at this point in time.
Correct, but we also point out that we're talking about test positivity when we're talking about the 5%. So.
Right, but what my fear is right now is that people take that into consideration. They are not taking that into consideration. They just hear 5% and they just think something entirely different.
Right.
I don't mean.
Clarify that as best we can, Matthew.
Yep.
To your next point.
Okay. With the emails and everything else, I'm sort of glad I'm hearing that people are sort of wanting to reduce those, because honestly, I think that, and I do have to say the same thing in some ways, I believe that if those people who want to be informed daily will know where that, will know where the document, where the charts are and everything. Those who don't want to know or don't mind getting informed like once a week will be happy about that. I mean, honestly, those people who are worried and who want to know will find out. They will find a way to find out. I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. So I'm sort of glad I'm hearing that, because honestly, I'm one of those people who just actually put everything that comes from that email into its own little folder, and I look at it maybe once every 2 days. The final thing for me really is I understand that the Board of Health has actually said they won't take it. They'll look into this into January, but in a way, it's them saying we're not going to look into it. Don't ask us again. End of story. Even though they are quote unquote positive in their responses, they pretty much told you no straight out. We'll look into it in January. Come back to us then. My worry is that we are going to start seeing that if this Omicron is going to be virulent, as everybody claims it's going to be, it is not going to slow down anytime soon. Now, as somebody pointed out as well, this is becoming flu-like or common cold-like, and that's because the COVID is a variant of the common cold. It is a novel version of the cold, and that's why it has been given its COVID-19 and such numbering. So ultimately, we are going to be living with this for the rest of our lives, because if it is like the common cold, we don't have a cure for the common cold. We don't have a cure for the flu. We don't have, the vaccines themselves work rarely with Omicron at this point in time. What was it? I believe it was Cornell University this week came out with more than 900 cases of COVID, and they have over 10,000 people. Now, the thing is that every single one of the ones who got infected, they have a 99% rate of vaccination. So the only question comes into did they have the booster shot, which again, as some people say, you're moving the goalposts if we do that. But if we take the shot where it was 2 shots, called a day, those people who took the 2 shots early last year are no longer fully vaccinated, as it has been proven with the Omicron vaccine. What we need to look into, though, is that Omicron at this point in time has not sent anybody to the hospital. There have been no deaths to this. So are we looking at something where it is ultimately just going to fade to the point of where it's going to be a common cold variant? Like you said, there may be a vaccine for it, but will it be actually required? Because honestly, right now, it's going to become to the point where you're going to have people, no matter where you are, because even with the common cold, people themselves have an issue with getting colds. They react with them differently. They get infected. They get hospitalized if they're immunocompromised, stuff like that. We are going to see this for the rest, I believe, for at least another good 10 to 15 years if it goes the way that almost other viruses went or common colds have gone. And I'm just afraid that we are going, if we don't put our foot down, ultimately we are going to be saying in another 6 months, in another 2 months, in another 3 months. I mean, we've literally gone from saying we could take 2 weeks to knock down the curve to where we are now. And I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little tired of it.
Matthew, I think you make some good points as far as Omicron. There's still a lot of unknowns, and I think that's why it's important to see what happens in January. I hope that it is trending to a less virulent form of a virus that is not as potent. It's not sending people to the hospital. But as of right now, there's just too many unknowns, and I think that's what we're going to be looking to see going forward. But you do, like I said, there are some things that we're going to be watching very closely, and we're aware, and I appreciate you bringing those to our attention.
All right, thank you. I'm just worried that it's like we're going to be treating this like it's a novel thing for the rest of our lives, or at least for our kids going through school and everything. I mean, we take a chance every time we get out of the house. I mean, honestly, that's where we're going to be, I think, is that anytime we walk out of the house, do we get the cold? Do we get the flu? Do we get COVID? Do we get hit by a car? Do we what?
I hear you, Matthew.
All right.
Noted, and I appreciate the input.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay. That brings us to, unless we have anyone else with their hands raised, do we do anything? I don't see any. Okay, moving on to subcommittee reports, PMBC.
No update.
Budget?
The Budget Subcommittee can report that we had a meeting last week. Matt, thank you for attending as well. The budgeting process is moving along nicely. Steve, thank you for your efforts. We've shared the preliminary numbers with the town. The district's in good shape. Kelly's put together some small asks to sort of enhance the district next year. Nothing out of the ordinary. Again, the budgeting process continues. We're actually coming up against some deadlines to finalize our numbers and the like, but things are good on the budgetary standpoint.
Great. Policy Subcommittee.
We are planning to meet. We will meet soon, but we have not yet met. There's miscommunication.
And CPAC.
I did not get an update from the CPAC leader, so I don't know what I would say. Lynn, is there anything?
I believe there's a meeting scheduled for January.
There's a meeting scheduled for the third week of January, January 17th, I think off the top of my head. I will give you more information in the next meeting.
That would be a busy week.
And just to reiterate, our policies are in great shape, so it doesn't create an urgent need to meet frequently.
So this is our last meeting before we break for the holidays, so I want to just take the opportunity to wish everyone a happy and safe holiday break, and look forward to getting some rest for all of us.
Me too.
Okay, at this point, I will accept the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, this is a roll call vote. Motion made second. Roll call vote. Jen?
Jingle, yes.
Brad?
Fred Olson, yes.
Timlin?
Yes.
Justin?
Justin McCarthy, sure.
Matt Hunt votes yes as well. And that concludes our meeting. See you in 2022.
Happy holidays, everybody.
We'll put back the table first.
Yeah.